Hello and welcome back to my channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Chapter 15, Gathering the Forces. That was easier than I expected, Renji admitted as he and his companions made their way through the void between worlds that made up Ichigo's Garganta. Rukia led the way, her expert control over her Ryatsu creating a stable path for everyone to run on. Ishida sped alongside them using his Hirenkyaku. What, you were expecting a series of epic battles? Rukia asked with a smirk. Sort of, yeah. I know what you mean, Renji, Ichigo agreed, having taken off his mask upon entering the Garganta. I thought for sure Aizen would do more to keep Inoue. I mean, 2 low-level Espada. Seriously? I alone was equal to the Sexta Espada, with you guys he should have at least included Ulquiorra or higher. Aizen most likely did not anticipate Inoue being able to escape, Ishida pointed out. And while Aranjero was trying to fool us, the best lies contain elements of truth. Aizen probably did tell all the Espada to wait in their chambers for us. If Inoue hadn't escaped, then we would have had to infiltrate Las Noches and then fought many of them. That said, the Espada he did send were well chosen, Ichigo said thoughtfully. Someone who could pass as a Shinigami that was close to Rukia, and someone whose power was to take control of others, perfect for infiltrating and then killing us all. He was obviously prepared for the possibility of Inoue escaping. Chad nodded. We should not question good fortune. Let us simply hurry back to Karakura, to aid the fight against Aizen. Hopefully we won't get into too much trouble with Soul Society, Renji murmured. Relax, Ichigo said reassuringly, would Yamamoto punish you now, when he needs all the able-bodied Shinigami he can get? Especially ones who can take out Espada, or have achieved Bankai. Besides, we never technically broke any orders, Rukia reminded her friends. We were ordered to return to Soul Society. We did, and then we came back. I'm just glad we're all okay, Inoue breathed with a sigh, having been woken up by Rukia while Ishida had battled his opponent. I can't wait to get home. I could use a shower and some food. Speaking of, do you think that Yamamoto Soteicho has already sent a few of the Taicho to Hueco Mundo, and moved everyone else to Karakura? Rukia asked. Maybe, Renji answered slowly. I mean, we were gone for what, an hour? Maybe 2. Sounds about right, Ishida agreed. I don't know for sure, but given what Urahara told us. Renji began, before taking a breath. We probably left Hueco Mundo at the same time as Soul Society strike force arrived there. Okay, Ichigo acknowledged. If that's true, then it's a safe bet to say that Aizen will attempt to trap them there and move the majority of his forces to Karakura. What's the best way to trap the Taicho in Soul Society? It would depend on the Taicho, Rukia told him. As you have probably already guessed, every Taicho has different specialties. Renji shook his head. No, the easiest way to trap them in Soul Society is to wear them down. One strong opponent, or waves of weaker Arankars. They may be easy to defeat, but even the Taicho have limited amounts of Ryatsu. They'd also come across a problem leaving Hueco Mundo, Ishida realized. They'd need some way to signal to Soul Society for an exit, or someone else with the ability to open a Garganta. It's possible they're relying on Urahara for that part, Ichigo suggested. I mean, he was able to open a way to Hueco Mundo. Maybe he gave them a device to open a way back. Or to signal him. I could see that, Inoue piped up. I mean, they trusted Urahara-san with the super-secret way to protect all of Karakura so all the Taicho could fight at their full power, right? I don't think they'd trust the one man with so much, the archer disagreed. Technically, Urahara Kisuke is an outcast, exiled, remember? He has no obligation or loyalty to them. Asking him for so much would be putting themselves in his mercy. They would have to have something he wants very badly to do that. What do you mean? Ichigo asked, not understanding where Ishida was going with this. Think, Kurosaki. Urahara was banished from Soul Society when he was framed by Aizen for giving the wizard hollow powers, remember? Ishida unnecessarily reminded his rival. Put yourself in his shoes. You would feel betrayed, maybe even a little angry. He's had 100 years, the wizard argued. You said it yourself, Kurosaki. To a Shinigami, 100 years isn't that long, not when they live for thousands of years, Ishida said grimly. We also know that he's the founder of the Technology Bureau at Soul Society. Urahara's genius is even acknowledged by Soul Society, who asked him to find a way to protect Karakura while they fought. They respect his intelligence more than anyone's. His voice lowered. And an intelligent man knows how to make the system work for him. They need him, but he doesn't need them, Ichigo breathed. Precisely. Like I said, Urahara is a businessman, and if I'm right, holds no love for the society who banished him. He must have exacted a price for his assistance in protecting all Karakura instead of just his own house, and for assisting the Taicho to go to Hueco Mundo. And he's not afraid to withhold information or twist circumstances to his advantage, like he did when we were preparing to invade Soul Society and he didn't tell us about the Hogyoku. Ishida shook his head. No, Soul Society must have its own way to get back. Perhaps they sent along Kuratsuchi Mayuri, the new head of the Technology Bureau, Renji added darkly. If anyone would have a way to get back, or be able to figure out one, he's got the mad brilliance to do it. The Quincy pursed his lips at the man's name, but said nothing. He would never be able to forgive the man who had arranged for his grandfather's death simply so he could study the man's Quincy powers. All right, we're almost there, Rukia announced. Everyone ready? The grunts of agreement and the soul, yep, from Inoue almost made Rukia roll her eyes as they leapt through, arriving once more in the basement of Urahara's shop. Everyone was silent for a moment, before Ichigo laughed aloud, making everyone stare at him. We made it. We saved Inoue easily, and we made it back. This was so much easier than saving Rukia. Idiot. Rukia smacked him upside the head, but a smile was on her face as well. You barely did anything. To be fair, Renji pointed out, there were only 2 enemies to be fought, and you called one of them. And without Ichigo, we wouldn't have been able to get back easily. This is no time to be celebrating, Ishida said sternly. It is still likely that Aizen will attack in the very near future, we must be ready. Then let's get upstairs and see how things are, Ichigo proposed, and the group ran towards the ladder. Ishida was still flying on his Hirenkyaku. They made it upstairs and almost ran into Urahara, who greeted them with a smile. Well done, the shopkeeper congratulated. And you even made it back in time for the party. Has Aizen invaded yet? The orange-haired Shinigami asked, straight to the point. Not yet. Did you kill any of the Espada while you were there? I killed Aranjero, the Noveno Espada, Rukia answered. I finished off the Septima Espada, Zamari Leru, Ishida reported. By that time we had rescued Inoue, so we decided that we'd come back so we can protect Karakura, Ichigo explained. Excellent, and you are all unhurt. 2 down, 8 to go, Urahara said with his mischievous smile, not realizing that Rukia had healed her own minor wounds from Aranjero. Oh, and Aizen, Tosen and Nikimaru. Who was sent to Hueco Mundo? Renji asked curiously. Anohana Taicho and 2 of her squad members, Kuratsuchi Taicho, Kuchiki Taicho and Kenpachi Taicho. Not a bad combination, Ichigo mused, recalling his epic fight with the leader of squad, sheer brutal strength and resilience in Kenpachi. Madness and intelligence with Kuratsuchi. Ishida added, remembering using his Quincy final form to annihilate the nigh insane Kuratsuchi, only to find that the Taicho would recover soon from his self-induced liquid state. Kido and speed with Nisama, Rukia whispered. And a few healers if necessary, Chad finished. The other Taicho. They'll be here in Karakura. Urahara chuckled. I suppose I shouldn't call it Karakura, considering it is only a replica. What? Inoue asked, confused. Oh, it's my version of protecting everyone from the full powers of the Taicho without revealing Soul Society, Urahara praised himself. Kuratsuchi Taicho built a very precise replica of Karakura on the outskirts of Soul Society, and I built a device that would swap the replica and the real thing. It's a variation of a Senkaman, that I like to call Tenkai Ketchu. How does it work? Ichigo asked, curiously. And what happens to the people? Rukia piped up. Urahara smiled. It was nice to hear someone interested in his work. Well, like I said, it's based on a Senkaman. Of course, we don't want it permanently in Soul Society, so I had to create a device that would hold it in a barrier in Soul Society until a condition is met. However, it takes a lot of power and stability to keep something like that going, and I needed a way to define how much area was going to be taken. So, with some help from Tezsai, we created 4 enormous towers, linked through a variation of Kido. The 4 towers define how much area is going to be moved, in this case, all of Karakura, and the destruction of the towers triggers swapping the replica and the real town back by having the device lose its power. And the people? Ishida queried. They've been put into a special sleep that they won't wake from until we transfer them back. What about people who need medical attention? Ichigo asked, shocked. People who are dreadfully injured. People in hospitals who need periodic treatments. People in the middle of operations. What about people who are freaking driving and crash when they fell asleep suddenly? Relax, Ichigo, Urahara told him cheerfully. Ishida Ryukin went on the news and radio stations, stating that there was an airborne contagion with a relatively short half-life, a contagion that had infected all of Karakura, one that would put everyone to sleep at an approximate time. He heavily warned everyone to stop driving, get to a safe place, etc. He also said he'd brought in some people to oversee the hospital for the duration. Several unseated members of various squads did a quick patrol to make sure the roads were clear, and Squad 4 is overseeing the hospital with Ryukin's assistance. Ichigo sighed in relief. Glad to see all the steps have been taken. So, I assume the rest of the Taicho are here already? Indeed they are. And a few others you may recognize as well, Urahara agreed. I was, sort of forced to stay behind, due to my exile from Soul Society. Are you going to be participating? Ishida asked him pointedly. Perhaps. Not immediately in any case, the exiled Shinigami answered. I don't think I'm particularly wanted or needed at this point. There are 6 Taicho out there, along with whomever they decided to bring along. The Vizard. Ichigo suddenly realized. Did they escape the replacement? Will they help? He frowned. There's no time for me to ask. Guys, we need to get up there with the rest of them, now, Ichigo commanded authoritatively. There's no way to know when Aizen will make his move, and we need to be ready. He turned to Inoue. I hate to say this, Inoue, seeing how far you have improved and everything, but your unique healing abilities may mean the difference between life and death. I'm sure some of us are going to need you soon. Please stay back. Inoue nodded firmly, not liking but understanding the request. Be careful, everyone. That settled, Ichigo swiftly passed his focus to Ishida. I realize you don't like Shinigami. Can you put that aside and work with them for the time being? Ishida frowned, but nodded his agreement. There is little choice in any event. If I wish to help, I must work with people who make up the primary force. Ichigo turned to his best friend, Chad. Do you know how to airwalk yet? No. It's relatively simple. Simply focus your Ryatsu into the air beneath you to create a solid base to stand on. Think you can manage? Chad gave a small smile, silently activating his arms. If it's that simple, there is no problem. My arms' attacks require similar control over my Ryatsu. Seeing determined faces on his team, the substitute Shinigami nodded in acknowledgement. Then let's go. They ran out through Urahara's front door and simultaneously flickered up, above the action, up to where Yamamoto's forces were. Kurosaki Ichigo, Yamamoto greeted in his usual tone. I expected you to be in Hueco Mundo by now, rescuing your comrade. Seeing Renji and Rukia, Yamamoto's eyes opened a sliver further from their usual nigh-closed state. But I see that you must have already done so. Yes, Yamamoto-ji. She is currently waiting with Urahara-san. Ready to heal anyone who requires medical attention, Ichigo responded. With that done, we wanted to help defend our town. I see. Soifun Shunpaed next to their group. Kurosaki, are you aware that you and your fellow Ryoka are the only ones of significant power who have not seen the traitor Aizen Shirkai? I am. Are you aware of the significance? Ichigo scowled. You guys suspect you're still under Kyoka Suigetsu's influence. That means you want me, Ishida and Chad to handle Aizen. Now it was Soifun's turn to scowl. I would gladly kill him, given the chance, but I must concede that it is not wise for me to test myself against his illusions and his skill. Whatever. Fine, we'll take care of Aizen. Ichigo's face hardened as he continued darkly. I owe him a taste of my steel anyway. Be careful, Ichigo, Zangetsu warned. I know, Zangetsu. Been a hell of a day, eh? Find out that Inoue's been kidnapped, risk it all to get my body back, go back to Karakura for backup, return to Hueco Mundo, rescue her from Tu Espada, come back and find out that it's time for the final battle. Indeed. But remember you have a trump card, your Ajucha's mask. Use it sparingly, we have no idea how long your body can tolerate it at this point. Got it. While Ichigo was conversing with his Zanpakuto, Chad found the airwalk to be relatively easy, actually. It was hardly even draining on his Ryatsu when he had both his arms activated, like he had now. I wonder. Why would Aizen come here now, he murmured aloud. There are many opponents here, but only 4 Taicho level in Hueco Mundo. He shouldn't know that we have substituted Karakura or brought the rest of the Taicho here, yet, Ishida answered from beside him. Assuming that, he should take the opportunity to leave Hueco Mundo to come here and take advantage of our weakness, probably by bringing a number of his espada to keep us busy while he sacrifices Karakura to acquire the king's key. After all, we shouldn't be as strong as 4 experienced Taicho. An excellent analysis, Ishida-san, a calm, easygoing voice commented from behind the Quincy. He whirled to see Kairaku Shunsui. Hello, Kairaku-san, Chad greeted with a smile. Ah, Sato-kun. Shunsui said, delighted. I see you've gotten much stronger, he observed, waving a hand at Chad's improved arms. I have. Let us hope it's enough, the human with hollow-like powers said grimly. Oi, Ichigo. Ikaku. Ichigo was disturbed from his musings when the bald member of Squad 11 approached him. Madarame Ikaku grinned fiercely. Good to see ya, Ichigo. Ichigo gave the man a grin of his own. You too, Ikaku. Bet you're going to have fun, we'll be fighting some very strong people. You bet that large sword of yours I'm looking forward to it. Ikaku agreed enthusiastically. I'm guarding that pillar over there. He pointed towards one not far away. Can't let it get destroyed, otherwise the real Karakura comes back. Oh, that'll get you some strong opponents for sure, Ichigo commented. Who all's guarding the pillars? Let's see. Yumachika's on that one over there, Hisagai's got that one, and Kira's on the last one. Ichigo frowned pensively. I know them all. Then again, that's to be expected, Yumachika and Ikaku are part of Kenpachi's division, and the other 2 are lieutenants. Plastering a smile on his face, the substitute Shinigami made an excuse and left, returning to Yamamoto's group of Shinigami, this time seeing who all he knew. Let's see, all the Taicho are here. Anyone else? He recognized Matsumoto Ranjaku, along with Iba Tetsuzeman, the lieutenants of Hitsugaya Taicho and Kamamura Taicho respectively. There was a familiar one as well standing next to Soifun. A ripping sound snapped Ichigo's attention to it. A garganta was opening in the air. Reacting swiftly, Ichigo drew Zangetsu, feeling his partner thrum with power. Ready, Zangetsu. I am ready, Ichigo. Do not let your heart waver. Do not hesitate. Crush your enemies, so we may rest and view the sunset of the aftermath. I look forward to seeing it with you, Zangetsu. From the Garganta stepped forward Aizen, followed by Tosen and Jin, and then by over a dozen Arrancar, only a few of whom Ichigo recognized. Grimmjow, Neutra, Ulquiorra. That's the 6th, 5th and 4th Espada respectively. He scowled. DMN it. He didn't bring Yami along. That means Ulquiorra is still on his side. It is unfortunate, but that is how it is. It looks like he's brought just about all of his Espada and their fraction, Ichigo murmured loud enough for his side to hear. Yami isn't, though. He's probably still in Hueco Mundo to fight the Taicho you sent there. So this is indeed the final battle, Yamamoto rumbled. Aizen smiled. Ah, it seems you've performed an interesting trick, replacing Karakura with a cheap replica. It's no matter. I'll simply have to travel to Soul Society and make the King's Key there. His smile grew just a fraction more. After, of course, my forces eliminate you all. Should we go after the leader first? Iba asked his Taicho, Kamamura. Kamamura shook his head very slightly. No, Aizen's powers are one of a kind. We should take out his forces so we can concentrate on him. Only problem with that is that we have no guarantee that Aizen won't interfere with our fights with the Espada, Hitsugaya reminded them all, Ranjaku agreeing softly. If Aizen's powers work off hypnosis, then perhaps we should make it so he cannot see the world around us to use its effect, Ishida pointed out, trying to analyze the situation. Everyone, please move back, Yamamoto told everyone. Everyone did so just as Yamamoto's Ryatsu suddenly skyrocketed, forming an aura of flame all around him. Everyone working to protect Karakura, aside from Kairaku and Yukatake, widened their eyes in mild surprise that their commander was making the opening move. The Suteicho's wooden staff dissolved, revealing a simple katana under the wood with a purple handle and a circular hand guard. Reduce all creation to ash. Ryujin Jaka. The sword itself erupted into flame, and an inferno raged around Yamamoto, making everyone jump even further away. He wasted no time swinging Ryujin Jaka, sending an enormous wave of fire at Aizen. Less than a second later, Aizen, Tosen and Jin were surrounded by a sphere of flame, but the Arrancar were untouched. Jukaku Inju, Yamamoto spoke, satisfied as he resealed his sword. Aizen won't be getting out of there for a while. Now, to crush them. Ichigo stood agape, in awe of Yamamoto's sheer destructive power. Such terrifying power. And he doesn't even look winded. He didn't even use Bankai. Just how strong is he? He didn't realize he'd uttered his thoughts aloud until Kairaku was by his side and quietly answering his question. Yamaji is the oldest Shinigami in Soul Society, and he wields the strongest fire-type Zanpakuto, Ryujin Jaka. You'll find that most older Shinigami do not use their Bankai unless absolutely necessary, preferring to rely on their Shirkai. It is considered a mark of high skill to have Bankai, but even higher to have Bankai but never have to use it. It was considered a very big deal when you demonstrated your ability to break 3 lieutenants' Shirkai with nothing but your bare hands with no apparent effort, Yukatake continued where his friend left off. That's usually a strong indicator that you have the ability to defeat a low-level Taicho if you master your Shirkai. It's very likely that one day you will be as strong as Yamamoto Suteicho. And if you continue to progress at the rate you've shown, that day will come sooner than you think. Ichigo's attention was once more redirected to the opposing force when one of the Arrancar, presumably an Espada, began to speak. He was noticeably old, but solidly built, rather stocky with white hair being held back by his bone fragment, which was in the shape of a 5-pointed crown. He also had a thick white mustache, and his face was lined with scars, including one over his right eye. The Espada wore a white leather coat, with a black fur lining, but the coat had very short sleeves, revealing the espada's muscular arms and golden wristbands. "What do we have here?" the espada asked, with a note of curiosity in his voice. "Our enemies are numerous, and the boss is stuck in there." "I think you underestimate Aizen, Baragan," another Arankar responded. This Arankar was a dark-skinned woman, with short messy blonde hair. To Ichigo's minor embarrassment, her Arankar outfit was oddly cut. It covered the lower half of her face, and extended down so only a significant portion of the lower half of her BRSTS was covered. There was also a zipper, and Ichigo thought for a second that her power involved stucton of some sort. Her sleeves extended all the way to her hands, which were covered in black gloves. Her Arankar leggings had no changes from the norm worthy of note, and she wore her zanpakuto horizontally on her upper back. "And I think you underestimate me, Harabel," the now-named Baragan answered indifferently. He snapped his fingers, and 6 of the Arankar proved themselves his fraction by quickly coming to attention and unveiling a throne of bone out of nowhere. Baragan seated himself. "With the boss unable to move, I'll be giving the orders," he announced, before narrowing his open eye and adding darkly, "You better not have a problem with that." "Sure, why not?" A tall Arankar with mid-length wavy brown hair, and a necklace made from his hollow mask remnant of a lower jaw, said lazily right before being kicked in the leg by a young-looking girl whose horned mask had a stump on the left horn. "Ow! What are you doing, Lilinet? That hurt." Ichigo's sweat dropped. "If I'm not mistaken, that's an espada. Maybe espada dos, since that Baragan guy took control easily. And he's being kicked around by his fraction." Apparently Ishida was thinking similar thoughts. How shameful. His thoughts were echoed by another young-appearing Arankar, with 3 pink stars above her left eye. Her hollow mask, a set of upper teeth, was held in a comb-like fashion in her short black hair. Seeing the girlish attributes, including the pretty face, Ichigo and company were a little surprised to hear a boy's voice come out when the Arankar said, "Geez, an espada being picked on by his own fraction." "Shut it, Luppy!" Lilinet barked. "Make me, fraction." "Oh, sorry, I forgot that I'm an espada and you're just Stark's puppy." "Know your place, Luppy," Baragan ordered. "You may be an espada now that a position opened up, but you are merely a Septima espada, and I am not as forgiving as the boss." Luppy was very noticeably quiet after that. "Now, on to business. The boss said that this place is a fake, that it's been replaced with a replica in Soul Society," the old man who'd taken charge mused. "But do we really need to go there?" He gestured towards the pillars. "It's obvious the pillars here are somehow keeping the replica here and the real Karakura in Soul Society. So, what happens if we destroy those pillars?" He nodded to himself. "Finder." "Yes, sir." He brought his right hand to his mouth. Somehow, that was a signal for 4 garganta to open, one right by each pillar. A large hollow appeared from each one, lunging for the pillars. Baragan sat back in his chair, amused. "We know where the pillars are. These places always have bridges on the north, south, east and west sides. If we destroy the pillars, then the real Karakura will return, and become our battleground." "Oh sheet. They know." Omida, a rather rotund Shinigami that Ichigo vaguely recognized from very early on in his invasion of Soul Society to rescue Rukia, cried out to his Taicho, Soifun. Yamamoto looked on, undisturbed by the events. He opened his mouth enough to say just one word, "Fools." In that instant, the hollows were destroyed, sliced away by the defenders of the towers. The Espada were highly surprised, and even Stark looked shocked by the turn of events. "Do you really think that we'd leave such important locations unprotected? I've stationed skilled warriors there." Ichigo looked on with a smirk. "Come on, did you trade your common sense for power here? Of course the towers are gonna be protected." Baragan scoffed. "Fine. If you have sent ants to protect the pillars, I should send dragons to crush them. Coolhorn, Abarama, Finder." His tone turned commanding, brutal and ruthless. Crush them. Yes sir. The 4 Fraction Baragan had named leapt out towards each of the pillars, flickering into Sonido. Kurosaki Ichigo. Okiura stepped forward, his indifferent expression never changing. I see you have returned from your hollow state. Ichigo scowled, feeling the combined glares and stares of his allies who had not known the truth. I have, and I am stronger than ever, he replied coolly. Is that so? Okiura shifted his attention to Chad. Sato Yasutora, you have said that your arms are manifestations of your feelings, your will. They are. I expect you to show me how strong your feelings are in the coming battle, or I will kill you myself. Okiura's expression never changed. Chad looked at the 4th Espada defiantly. Don't worry, you'll see them. Ichigo glanced at Chad, and hoped he'd be alright. Scanning through the Arrancar, he saw one whose focus was centered upon him. Got a problem, Grimjow? That seemed to snap him out of it. Kurosaki. Grimjow roared. Fight me. Ichigo gripped Zangetsu with a smirk. Fine then. Bring it. I'll face whoever wants to fight me, Luppy called out. Multiple opponents are fine too. When Rukia, Renji, Ishida and Ranjaku all appeared in front of him, the new Septima Espada smiled. 4 on 8, eh? Sounds fun. He turned into a hollow. Yamamoto rumbled angrily. How can that be? I can see him right now, and every sense I have says that he is a Shinigami. Ah, Yamaji, Shunsui began placatingly, we do know he has hollow powers not willingly given to him. It's probably an unforeseen consequence. It only lends credit to what I've been saying all along, Soifun insisted. He became a hollow. Even if he is a Shinigami today, making him stronger will only make our fight more difficult when he betrays us all and loses control permanently. Soifun, you know that's not fair, Yukitake scolded. It's not like he joined Aizen or anything. If he had, don't you think Aizen would have used the Hugioku to keep him in that hollow form and on his side, rather than on ours? It does prove troublesome, Hitsugaya murmured. However, I believe Kurosaki Ichigo will not lose to his hollow again. Yamamoto opened his eyes at Hitsugaya, a silent challenge. The ice user sighed, and prepared for a verbal chewing out. From what I understand of Urahara's explanations, Kurosaki Ichigo's hollow powers are manifested internally by what he would have been had he turned into a hollow, much like our Zanpakuto are manifested internally by their spirits. Further, Kurosaki needs to fight what is essentially himself periodically in order to keep himself from degenerating into a hollow. And you did not suspect that Kurosaki Ichigo had become a hollow? Yamamoto asked, his words hard as steel. I suspected, but Urahara maintained that Yoruchi was training him, Sutecho, Hitsugaya responded smoothly. Without any evidence, I would rather not cast shadow on anyone who may not deserve it. After all, Kurosaki Ichigo and his friends did Soul Society a great service, did they not? Very well. You have asserted that Kurosaki will not become a hollow once more. Explain. Yes, Sutecho. I can only speculate, but I would presume that Kurosaki's hollow self fled to Hueco Mundo and underwent hollow evolution there. If they are anything alike in terms of gaining power quickly, definitely to Jillian, or possibly Ajuchas. If Kurosaki is in control now, he must have challenged and beaten his inner hollow at its most powerful yet. He will only grow stronger. Hitsugaya looked directly into Yamamoto's orbs. Kurosaki Ichigo is not a threat to Soul Society. I concede that he may need watching during those times that he fights his inner hollow, but I believe he has proven himself determined and powerful enough to keep that inner hollow at bay. Besides, shouldn't we give him some leeway? Advanced hollow powers might be just the edge he needs to defeat Aizen, and he is the only one with Taicho-class Ryatsu who has not seen Aizen's Shirkai. No one can win every fight, especially against himself, Kamamura protested. Even so, don't we owe him the benefit of the doubt? Shunsui argued. Is this really an appropriate conversation to have at this time? Yukatek asked with an embarrassed smile on his face. Aizen and his forces are still here. That seemed to bring everyone back to reality, and they turned to regard the assortment of Arrancar. Are you quite done, Shinigami? Baragan asked, sounding rather irritated. Good. Now it seems that 3 Espada have chosen their opponents. Anyone else? Neutra stepped forward, holding his precious Santa Teresa in front of him threateningly. I bet not a single one of you can cut me. My Hierro is the strongest of the Espada. Is it just me or does he sound like Kenpachi? Shunsui murmured under his breath. Soifan smirked as though she had already won. I've wanted to kill Kenpachi for a long while, this idiot'll prove a nice substitute. I'll take you on, she called. A woman? Neutra screamed angrily. Why is it always a FNG woman who accepts my challenges? Neutra-sama, please be careful, a male blonde Arrancar with a strange diagonal blue mark on his left cheek asked respectfully. He was slim, with a small bone fragment appearing on his forehead in a circlet. He also wore an eye patch on his right eye, apparently mirroring Neutra's own eye patch over his left. Shut the hell up, Tesla. And don't interfere with my battles. Same goes to you, Soifan warned her lieutenant, Omida Marekio. Taicho. Omida cried out in protest, but acknowledged the order even as he turned to Tesla, readying his Zanpakuto. Fine then, I'll have to deal with this guy then. Tesla merely smiled. Baragan looked on impassively as the 4 of them left for a separate part of Karakura, so as not to be interrupted. Espada 7 through 4 have now chosen their opponents. Harabel, Stark. I don't care, I think I'll wait and see if your fraction finish them. Maybe I won't have to do anything, Stark responded lazily. I believe I shall wait as well, Baragan, Harabel responded. Not all of us are as bloodthirsty as Neutra. So be it, Baragan boomed, carefully paying close attention to how his fraction were doing by way of his Ryatsu sense. Having arrived at the silently agreed-upon spot above the fake Karakura, Ichigo felt the adrenaline coursing through his body in time with his heartbeat, which seemed unnaturally loud to him. Every beat sounded as the beat of a war drum, and with every beat of that drum he felt the primal lust for battle grow within him. With a flash of insight, Ichigo realized why it felt so much stronger now. We're playing for keeps. He won't hesitate to kill me. His grip on Zangetsu's hilt tightened. I've never killed someone who looks so very human, but I can't afford to hesitate. Kurosaki, you humiliated me by injuring my resurrection. Grimjow's solemn voice somehow made itself heard, distracting Ichigo from the sound of his own heartbeat. Allow me to show you how much stronger I have become. He lunged at his opponent with Sonido, his spiky blue hair pulled back from the air pressure. Ichigo blocked Grimjow's vicious swipe with Zangetsu, though his Zanpakuto buckled under the pressure. You have grown stronger, the wizard acknowledged. But so have I. Obviously, the Arrancar agreed with a bloodthirsty grin even as he leapt back to avoid a decapitating strike from his orange-haired enemy. Before, that strike would have cleaved right through that pretty cleaver of yours. Hardening his resolve, Ichigo's eyes glowed blue with spiritual power as he began to spin Zangetsu to his right side, charging a Getsuga for use later. He wanted to save Bankai for when Grimjow used Resurrection. Then it's a good thing you're just a PP cat at heart. The Espada saw red. I'm a panther, UFNG Strawberry. Grimjow used Sonido to appear at Ichigo's left side, hoping to capitalize on the opening he'd perceived. Ichigo had anticipated that, however, using Shuanpa to disappear and reappear directly behind Grimjow, swinging his Zanpakuto. Getsuga Tensho. Never let it be said, however, that Grimjow was slow. He remembered that move quite well, and so he drew his Zanpakuto with all the speed he had and blocked the Getsuga-enhanced Zangetsu with it. In his other hand, however, Grimjow had charged a Siro, which he then fired at Ichigo. Ichigo had seen the red glow a moment before the hollow attack had been fired, but didn't have enough time to fully escape or block the onslaught. The powerful Siro burned hotly against his hands even as he used a Getsuga-enhanced Zangetsu to deflect the majority of it away from himself. As the Siro faded, Ichigo gathered his own attack. Hado 4, Byakurai, he murmured under his breath, spinning around and throwing out his right hand, pointing his fingers at his opponent so Grimmjow wouldn't see the pale off-white Kido past the fading red of his Siro until it was too late. It worked. The Sexta Espada had almost no warning before the white-hot lightning pierced him in the shoulder, leaving a hole the size of a nickel. Ichigo had aimed for his torso, but Grimmjow had managed to dodge somewhat at the last moment. The injury managed to enrage Grimmjow further. Before, Kurosaki had needed Bankai to even keep up with him in his unreleased state. Now, however, the orange-haired substitute was somehow scoring hits, cutting him in his Shirkai. Ichigo took in a deep breath, sending what little hollow Ryatsu circulated in his Shinigami form towards his hands to heal his burns slowly, using Kido with burned hands hurt like a beach. He looked up as he felt Grimmjow's Ryatsu spike. Oh boy, here we go. Not again, you will not humiliate me again, boy. Grind, Pantera. And that's my cue, Ichigo muttered. Bankai. Okiura eyed Chad's two activated arms dispassionately. Your Ryatsu is impressive for a human, he asserted. Thank you. I also acknowledge that you must be extremely strong despite your appearance, for you to be the Quarta Espada, Chad stated. Indeed. Okiura paused, ping his head to the side. I invite you to strike me with your most powerful technique on me. You are at your strongest now, yes. I am. Okiura nodded. And I am at my weakest. I am not in Resurrection, and my sword is sheathed. Why do you want me to do this now? Chad asked. To show you the meaning of despair. No human can defeat me, Okiura stated as though it were fact. However, it also serves a second purpose. We must both recognize that under normal circumstances, a human would be hard-pressed to defeat even the most basic hollow, correct? Given that humans typically cannot see them, and do not usually have the necessary strength or knowledge of how to defeat them, yes. The empowered human agreed tentatively. You have said that your power comes from your emotions. More specifically, your faith in your grandfather's preachings for your right arm. Your attack will provide excellent data for how much your emotion affects the strength of a human. Out of curiosity, what does your left strength come from? My will to attack. I see, the Quarta Espada acknowledged. And how strongly do you wish to attack me, to inflict pain upon me? At the moment, not very strongly at all, Chad confessed easily. Right now, we are having a civil conversation. Okiura nodded slowly. I believe I can understand that. Does the fact that I am here to destroy your town and sacrifice it for Aizen-sama make any difference? Chad felt a flash of anger at the reminder. He said nothing, but the Arrancar saw the change in Chad's body language. Pursuing the lead, Okiura decided to push the subject. I wonder what will happen to all the souls that are sacrificed to create the Hugioku, he mused. I suppose they will be erased from existence. Chad's eyes widened. Kigo. Tatsuki. Everyone. Allow me to provide a bit more incentive, Sato Yasutora, to wish to attack me. If you fail to injure me, I will personally remove your arms from you and force you to watch your comrades be sacrificed to the Hugioku and removed from the cycle of reincarnation, Okiura promised. That did it. Chad's rage could no longer be controlled. He dashed forward with all the speed of his Paso del Viento and slammed his left hand, blazing with power, into Okiura's diaphragm. La muerte, he cried out, creating an imprint of a skull with his Ryatsu all around the Quarta Espada, before punching Okiura directly in the face with El Brazo Directo del Gigante. El Directo. An incredibly powerful blast rocketed out from his right arm, an order of magnitude stronger than his normal blasts. Okiura went flying, but swiftly recovered, only to find Chad had used his speed technique to be once more in his face. La muerte. Chad repeated, but this time his left arm found itself blocked by Okiura using both hands to hold his wrist. That was, impressively strong, Sato Yasutora, Okiura stated with a cough. Chad noticed with some satisfaction that the espada had coughed up a minor amount of blood. Thank you, but I'm not done yet. Chad's right arm slammed into Okiura's head from the side in a truly brutal right hook, which made Okiura stagger just long enough for Chad to complete his earlier technique. Like I was saying, La Muerte. Chad's left fist struck in a picture-perfect uppercut. Die. Okiura was sent flying once again, but he used Sonido to reappear behind the empowered human. How astonishing. He paused to spit out some blood. I would never have expected any human to be able to injure me, even in this, my weakest form. Your emotions, combined with your power, make you this strong. He shook his head. If you master yourself and your power, you will truly be a force to be reckoned with. However, it is time for me to teach you the true meaning of despair. He drew his sword. Bind, Murcielago. Luppy looked around, seeing his four opponents, Ishida, Ranjaku, Renji and Rukia. There's no way you can win against me, you know. And why is that? Ranjaku asked, drawing her sword fluidly, ready to release it at any time. Her actions were mimicked by her fellow Shinigami, while the lone Quincy among them summoned his bow. Yeah, if you can't be beat, then why aren't you the Primera Espada? Ishida pointed out with a smirk. F you. Luppy yelled, inordinately angered by the barb, before suddenly smiling again and leering at Ranjaku. Speaking of, perhaps I will save that big melanced one for later. His smile grew. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Unlike that girl who looks like she hasn't hit PBRTY yet. I mean, seriously, you look like you're flat as a washboard. Wouldn't want you if Aizen-sama paid me for it. Oh, sorry. Ranjaku felt a very sudden urge to take a scalding shower, feeling very dirty having her enemy's eyes on her that way. Meanwhile, Rukia's eyes twitched as both Renji and Ishida backed away, feeling her Ryatsu spike with a murderous intent. Only Renji could see that his longtime friend was muttering something. Straining his ears, he could barely hear. Flutter of wings, ye who bears the name of man. That was enough for the tattooed Shinigami. Rukia was probably using either Sukatsui or Shikaho. But her next words confused him. Carriage of thunder. Bridge of a spinning wheel. With light, divide this into 6. What? Renji thought to himself, confused. That's the incantation of Bakudo 61, Rikujikoro. Ah, did I hurt your feelings? Luppy asked mockingly, drawing his sword and waving it at the girl, seeing Rukia's quiet talking and mistaking it as talking to herself. Well, who the F cares what one flat-chested beach thinks? Renji, however, heard Rukia continue. On the wall of blue flames, inscribe a twin lotus. In the abyss of conflagration, wait at the far heavens. Rukia looked up and glared at the espada before them. Bakudo 61, Rikujikoro. Luppy, caught by surprise, found himself bound by the 6 rods of light, unable to move. What the hell, he demanded. I'm not done yet, the ice-wielding Shinigami cried out. Hado 63, Soren Sukatsui. Blue flames gathered at the end of her palm just before she moved it towards her opponent. Luppy, seeing the Kido blast swiftly approaching, and bound as he was, knew he had only one option. He was just glad he had drawn his sword earlier. Strangle, Trepidora. Chapter 16, What Makes Us Hollow. Grimmjow growled ferociously at Ichigo, Resurrection against Bankai. I'm going to rip you to shreds, he promised with a psychotic grin that reminded Ichigo of Cazador de la Luna. Just try it, kitty cat, Ichigo taunted, wasting no time spinning Tensa Zangetsu by the chain on his finger to charge up another Getsuga. Grimmjow roared at the insult, but Ichigo was thrown off balance when he felt the roar create a shockwave in the air he stood upon. The espada lunged at him with all the speed of his resurrection, trying to take advantage of Ichigo's being off guard. Ichigo quickly leapt out of the way, though it was a close thing. Grimmjow was noticeably, but not overwhelmingly, faster than the Shinigami. Last time, I needed the mask to keep up. Ichigo's frown settled firmly upon his face. No. I don't need the mask for this. I do not need to rely on my hollow powers for every fight. He felt Zangetsu's approval at this thought, which only further solidified his stance. Is that it? He asked in as bored a tone as he could manage. Ichigo found himself blocking a strike from Grimmjow's right claw with Tensa Zangetsu, but he quickly knocked his opponent back with the pent-up Getsuga Tensho. At the same time, however, Ichigo had gotten a brutal kick to the side, pushing him into the side of a building. Grimmjow caught the Getsuga with his elbow blades and was pushed into another nearby building, but a moment later he forced the attack to dissipate. During his opponent's momentary distraction, Ichigo was not just standing and waiting, trying to finish it quickly, he decided to give Kido a shot again. Knowing he couldn't afford the incantation, the wizard attempted the most powerful Heido at his disposal, throwing out his left arm, palm facing the quickly recovering Grimmjow, he cried out, Heido 63, Soren Sukatsui. The blast struck true, and Ichigo tried to peer through the smoke to see his enemy. Bit slow, aren't ya, Kurosaki Ichigo? Ichigo used Shuinpa just in time to evade being disemboweled by Grimmjow. He reappeared several meters away. You used Sonido to evade that Kido, Ichigo realized with a scowl. You're fast, for a Shinigami. Grimmjow's scowl matched Ichigo's. Pull out that DMN mask of yours, I want to fight you when you're at your strongest. Not a chance, Grimmjow. Grimmjow looked incredulous for a moment, and then furious. You're going to fight me, and you hope to kill me, with FNG handicap? Don't insult me. He took a bracing stance, with his left foot behind him, and raised his right arm. Ichigo couldn't help but notice the blades that curved upwards from the Arrancar's elbows and knees. He was caught by surprise, however, when from the elbow blades came several small projectiles. His surprise didn't keep him from using Shuinpa repeatedly to evade the absurdly fast darts. When explosions sounded from behind him, Ichigo was not surprised at all. Instead, he tried to take a leaf out of Byakuya's book. Ichigo Shuinpa'd right behind Grimmjow, watching for the whip-like tail, and stabbed backwards just as Byakuya had done to him so long ago to destroy his borrowed powers from Rukia so Ichigo could not interfere with her execution in Soul Society. Mentally slapping himself for getting caught in memories in the middle of battle, Ichigo refocused on Grimmjow. Unfortunately, his distraction had cost him. The tail managed to deflect Tensa Zangetsu, so Ichigo used the momentum of his stab to push himself away, narrowly avoiding a vicious swipe from Grimmjow's claw. However, he hadn't seen the Sexta Espada charge up a Ciro in his other hand, which came hurtling at him like a rocket. It was too close to dodge. The orange-haired wizard was forced to bring Tensa Zangetsu to bear and slice down on the Ciro. Getsuga Tensho. The Ciro and the Getsuga raged against each other. For several moments before the Getsuga was engulfed by the raging red of the Ciro. Ichigo shielded his body as best he could, hardening his Ryatsu to take as much damage as it could. When the Ciro faded, Ichigo's hands and arms were burned once again, and there were tears in his Bankai outfit, but he was okay. You're really pissing me off, he muttered, right before his instinct screamed at him. Just in time, Ichigo spun and managed to catch Grimmjow's right claw by the wrist right in front of his face. Put on your DMN mask. Grimmjow demanded. Ichigo glared at the Espada, but even as he opened his mouth to respond, both of them were distracted by the distinct ripping sound of a garganta opening. They looked, and Ichigo's eyes widened. Nell. Nell came to see Ichigo, the child ex-Espada said with a smile that stretched from ear to ear. Her fraction, Dondochaka and Pesh, saw Grimmjow and immediately jumped in front of her. Nell-sama, we might want to leave, it looks like Ichigo is busy. Pesh tried to reason. Grimmjow's face slowly gained a smirk as he realized what a card he had on his opponent. So, you care about that girl? He used his free hand and jutted his elbow out at them, sending several explosive darts at them. No choice. Releasing Grimjow's hand, Ichigo Shunpaed between them and in a fluid motion, ripped his Jillian mask into place adorning his face, pure white on the right side of the mask, thick red stripes on the left. Getsuga Tensho. The darts were all obliterated by the massive crescent attack, and Grimjow barely managed to Sonido out of the way with wide eyes. You weren't nearly that strong before, he protested, gazing past the mask into Ichigo's hollow-like amber eyes. Ichigo. Nell stuttered, beginning to feel fear as she realized that she had just dropped into the middle of a fight that felt disturbingly like a fight between two Espada. The Vizard's Ryatsu was overwhelming, especially so up close, and it was beginning to spark old memories. Nell could feel them, feel the block inside her crumbling swiftly. Then, the Ryatsu became too much for her, and she fainted, Dondochaka catching her. You wanted the mask. Now you've got it. Ichigo appeared behind Grimjow, Tensa Zangetsu practically oozing with black Ryatsu. Grimjow used Sonido to evade a swing that would have permanently removed his legs from his torso, but realized belatedly that he'd received a serious slash to his back. His spine had been spared, thankfully. What's wrong? Ichigo taunted, spinning Tensa Zangetsu at his side once more to charge up another Getsuga. Where's your cocky FNG grin, Grimchowder? Is little old me too much for you? Grimjow had no chance to reply, as Ichigo had suddenly thrown his sword at him, covered in the black Ryatsu of the Getsuga Tensho. As he narrowly evaded the incoming Zanpakuto, the Espada barely blocked Ichigo's fist with his own claw. In that moment of contact, he saw Ichigo JRK back on the chain he held in his left hand. Realizing what it meant, the blue-haired Arrancar brought his whip-like tail up and attempted to catch Tensa Zangetsu, only to feel the Getsuga burning and cutting through his tail like a dark flame hiding daggers. Using Sonido at the very last moment, Grimjow barely managed to escape with a deep slice to his back and tail, watching as Ichigo caught his sword. Giving up already, coward? You who demanded to face this demonic power of mine. Stand up and fight me. Ichigo bellowed. Grimjow had two very conflicting urges at this point, first to flee from the Shinigami Hollow hybrid who could and would kill him, and the second to lunge at the being who would call him a coward. He never liked to admit this, but he knew he was no match for this monstrous hollowified form of Ichigo. How? He asked aloud, hating the fear that leaked into his voice. How have you grown so strong, so quickly? Shinigami and Hollow are two sides to the same coin, Ichigo intoned. Black and white. Light and dark. One is meaningless without the other to fight against, but what happens when they work together? I have fought and bled to win both my Zanpakuto, and my mask, my Shinigami and Hollow power. I have grown strong because I have never stopped fighting, because I have loved ones to protect. He glared at Grimjow, pointing the glowing Getsuga-enhanced Tensa Zangetsu directly at his head, and Grimjow regretted attempting to kill the brat of an Arrancar. The Espada half expected a spear to lunge out of Ichigo's Bankai sword and kill him in an instant, much like he'd seen Ikimara Jin use his Shinso. Tensa Zangetsu here wants you to die just as badly as I do. Give me a good reason to spare you. Protect. That gave Grimjow an idea. Fine then. You've proven your strength. It's not shameful to lose to the man who will take down Aizen. And I'm not really loyal to Aizen anyway. How about I make sure those 3 Arrancar you were protecting just now don't get hurt during the invasion? I'll be their bodyguard, because you can't protect them and kill that BSTRD at the same time. Just make DMN sure Aizen's dead when this is all said and done. When everything's over, I'll go back to Hueco Mundo and stay there. Ichigo paused. That's actually not a bad deal. He lowered his sword, keeping the Getsuga in Tensa Zangetsu just in case. One more thing, protect Urahara's shop down there. He proceeded to point it out. I have others down there that need protection, and that is our healing location. Are we agreed? Grimjow swallowed his pride visibly. Fine, I'll bring those Arrancar down there and protect the place. In exchange, you let me go free after this battle, and I stay in Hueco Mundo. As far away from you as possible. Good. But know this, Grimjow Jagerjax. If you fail to protect them, I will hunt you, tear you limb from limb, then have a friend of mine destroy your soul utterly. No chance at reincarnation, no rebirth, you'd be removed from existence itself. Ichigo's hollowified voice grew lower and even more threatening as he continued, his mask's mouth opening and closing with Ichigo's natural mouth, giving him the distinctly hollow double-mouth effect. Am I understood? Grimjow swallowed hard at those words. How could he not? His eternal existence was being threatened, not just his life. I understand. Kurosaki Ichigo. The Vizard finally dispelled the Getsuga from Tensa Zangetsu, reabsorbing the Ryatsu. Removing his mask to conserve any potential time limits, and to keep his allies from attacking him, Ichigo nodded towards the espada. Don't forget. He turned towards his friends and saw that Nell had collapsed. He shared a look with Pesh, both worried. Pesh, Dondo Chaka, follow Grimjow. Take Nell to get healed. Right. For once, Pesh was deadly serious. They left swiftly. Ichigo turned away, forcing down the guilt he felt as he shunpaed away. Luppy's resurrection, at first glance, seemed to do little, despite having broken the bakudo that held him enough for him to get away from Rukia's Heido 63, Soren Sukatsui. The only thing that had changed on his body was a strange shell-like object on his back with 8 holes. However, when the object sprouted 8 enormous white tentacles, everyone understood what his earlier comment of 4 against 8 meant. It'd be foolish not to use our Shirkai at this point, Rukia suggested. We have no idea how strong those appendages are. Right then. Howl, Zabumaru. Renji's Zanpakudo became his segmented thick chainsword, and he swung it towards Luppy to get a feel for his strength. Luppy blocked it easily with just one of his tentacles, and Renji recalled Zabumaru to his hand, which he then used to block another tentacle that Luppy had sent at him. This tentacle had reshaped its ending into a spike, so Renji had to focus extra Ryatsu into keeping Zabumaru from breaking. Growl, Hiniko. Ranjiku's Zanpakudo dissolved into a cloud of ash, which she directed at Luppy, trying to take out the tentacles at their source, but immediately found herself caught up in one of Luppy's deceptively strong appendages, completely wrapped up and at his mercy. She concentrated on cutting the tentacle off to free herself. However, Ranjiku was beat to the punch when Ishida punched through the tentacle with one of his powerful arrows. He used Hirenkyaku next to her and used a seal Schneider to cut through her binding, freeing the busy Shinigami from her bench. Dance, Sodi no Shirayuki. With a spin, Rukia's sword transformed into its glistening white released form, its ribbon trailing in its wake. Shunpaenji to a spot underneath Luppy, she swung her sword horizontally, summoning Sodi no Shirayuki's icy power. Sum no Mai, Tsukishiro. Luppy, who was unaccustomed to moving while in his released form, found himself completely caught by surprise when a pillar of ice formed around him. However, he could still control his tentacles to an extent, and used them to smash open the frozen prison. Before Luppy could do anything more, he saw and felt Ishida repeatedly piercing and cutting his tentacles with dozens of arrows, keeping him from using them to ensnare his foes again. With a frown, Luppy focused more of his power into the tentacles, covering them with spikes and using them as armor as he sent 3 of them after the Quincy, sending Ishida into bursts of Hirenkyaku to evade. However, Rukia had an idea. San no Mai, Shirafune, she intoned quietly, reforging her sword with the ice crystal remnants of her Tsukishiro. She lunged at Luppy, and predictably, he blocked with one of his tentacles. Rukia smirked as she felt her sword push past the spiky armor and begin to freeze the tentacle, the ice rapidly advancing towards Luppy himself. What? Luppy quickly hardened his Ryatsu and fired a bala at his tentacle where the ice had not yet touched, sending the frozen part to the ground while regrowing the appendage. Nice trick, you flat-chested beach. Rukia glared at him before taking on a stance. Sugi no Mai, Hakuren. Luppy, Septima Espada, was many things, but stupid he was not. He used Sonido to get out of the way of the wave of ice, even though it tired him. He had grown his tentacles to extreme lengths, and the extra mass made it difficult to use the high-speed technique without his own Resurrection slamming into him. However, his preoccupation left him easy pickings for the rest of the team. Several powerful arrows were shot from Ishida, forcing Luppy to use his extra limbs for blocking them. Meanwhile, the ash from Ranjaku's Hiniko quietly engulfed him, and then with a fell slide, burrowed into the thing on Luppy's back and completely destroyed it, removing Luppy's tentacles from him. Renji used Luppy's shock to wrap him up in Zabumaru's blades, and Rukia Shunpaed in front of Luppy, Sodi no Shirayuki poised to stab him in the head. In case no one's ever told you this, you're a spoiled brat. And with that, Rukia's sword pierced Luppy's head, freezing him solid nigh instantly before he shattered. Now that that's over and done with, let's go help the others on the towers, Renji suggested. Nodding, the four of them split up to aid the four Shinigami on the towers. It doesn't matter what you look like, I'm going to rip that scrawny head of yours from your Afenji shoulders. Chad promised, seeing Okuyura's new form. The Espada had sprouted giant black bat-like wings. His mask remnant had also changed, now centering over his head, with two large horns extending to his sides and in front. Okuyura's sword had changed shape, now taking the form of a simple javelin, and his hair had grown longer. Prepare yourself, Sato Yasutora. Acting on instinct, Chad raised his right arm in a blocking maneuver, just in time to block his opponent, who had seemingly materialized right in front of him. Wasting no time, the empowered human lunged out with El Brazo Izquierda del Diablo, powering up La Muerte. To Chad's surprise, the attack connected firmly against Okuyura, imprinting the skull pattern upon him and the air around him. He should have been able to evade that, given the speed he was going earlier. But it was only now that Chad realized that Okuyura appeared completely unharmed. Your attacks can no longer hurt me, Okuyura said calmly, confirming Chad's fear. How does that make you feel? Angry, Chad growled, charging up power in both fists. Ah yes, exchanging rationality for power, the bat-like Espada murmured, recalling his first encounter with Ichigo and his friends. I cannot fault you for the effort, you are quite strong, stronger than many high-level hollows. But your power is not sufficient to harm me at this level. You forget, my anger manifests in my will to cause you pain. Chad bellowed, rushing in with his Paso del Viento and plunging his fist into Okuyura's face. La Muerte. He lashed out with his right arm and struck Okuyura in the mouth. El Directo. Okuyura was sent flying, but he swiftly recovered before giving his opponent a measuring look. An interesting tactic. If my hierro is too strong, weaken an already weak area first and then attempt to blast through. You attempted to weaken the hierro around my face, and then fired one of your strongest blasts at my mouth, trying to destroy me from the inside out. No. I just wanted to take your head off, Chad admitted. Regardless, you succeeded in hurting me, however slightly, in this form. I would normally utilize my next level of power at this point, but I do not wish Aizen to know of it. I will do you the honor of defeating you at this level. You can try, the shaggy-haired human said darkly, getting in his battle stance. I will make this quick. Your emotions are a strength for you, but they are also a liability that you cannot afford. Okuyura raised a hand, and a Ciro formed, but this one was pitch black, seeming to absorb all light. This is my Ciro Oscuro. Chad readied himself, but was surprised when the Espada pointed it at Ichigo, who had just seemingly beaten Grimmjow. No. Somehow, Chad executed a faster Paso del Viento than he'd ever managed before, and materialized between Okuyura and Ichigo just as the emotionless Arrancar fired his deadly attack. He held his right arm, the stronger in defense, in front of him and braced it with his left, trying to endure the piercing, agonizing attack. Normally, a Ciro would simply explode against its victim or pierce through it, but Chad had coated his arms with as much Ryatsu as he could, keeping the Ciro at bay. However, he could feel the armor on his arm begin to crack and peel, and his Ryatsu was depleting dangerously quickly. It was only a matter of time before it was completely overwhelmed and he was vaporized. Abuelo. Chad thought in prayer. I'll see you soon in Soul Society, I hope. I had hoped to survive this confrontation, but if I had to die, I am glad it was to protect my nakama. Without warning, he felt a pulse of Ryatsu from deep within him, and it flowed over his right arm. To Chad's astonishment, it was taking another shape. My arm's evolving now. Within seconds, Chad's arm had finished its next evolution. He wasn't able to look at it properly, given his preoccupation with the Zero that was still trying to dig its way into him, but Chad could tell that his shoulder extension had disappeared, and the armor on his forearm had formed a shield of sorts. The shield rounded from the fist to the middle of his forearm, but then had parallel edges that made the shield extend further than his elbow before ending abruptly. Chad felt the newfound power of his newly upgraded arm, and instinctually channeled it towards the shield. He roared his strength and pushed with all his might, managing to deflect the Zero upwards towards the empty sky. He fell to one knee, barely able to keep afloat using the airwalk technique. I am impressed, Sato Yasutora. The human with hollow-like powers wearily looked up at Okiura before pushing himself to his feet. I will protect them, Chad wheezed, out of breath. And so you have, Okiura confirmed. You have more than proven how your emotion grants strength when you need it. To think that a human could deflect a high-level Espada's full power attack. I appear to have underestimated the power of the human spirit. Nevertheless, you are out of power and barely able to stand. How can you protect them now? I don't care how hurt or vulnerable I am. I made a pact with Ichigo, a pact that we would fight for each other and always watch each other's backs. Ever since that day, where he risked his life to help me protect something more precious to me than my own life. Chad steadied himself and got into a fighting stance. I refuse to break that oath, Okiura Schiffer. Not for you, not for anyone. Your teeth are chattering. Soifin's words to Omida acquired his attention as he forcibly retook control of his jaws, combating the fear that swelled within him from his first real fight in a long, long time. Before he could speak, though, Soifin continued. You're pathetic. I can't even stand to look at you. Are you afraid to die? Then this is a good opportunity. Let me handle these two, you go off and die doing something else. What were you talking about? Omida stuttered at first, but gained steam quickly. I'm not scared, I'm not going to run, and I'm definitely not going to die. Then don't. I wasn't going to, even without your orders. Several meters away, standing off against the Taicho and Fukutecho, Neutra scoffed. Your opponent looks like a fat weakling, Tesla. He does, Neutra-sama. I'm not sure which I would rather fight myself, the Espada mused. I'm sick and FNG tired of fighting women, but even she promises a better fight than that fat butt. Please allow me to take the weakling, Neutra-sama. I know you despise fighting them most of all, and then you can prove to the woman that they have no place on the battlefield, Tesla reasoned. Neutra seemed to consider, then grinned. Sounds good. Oi. Woman. We gonna fight or what? Impatient, aren't you? Soifin called out. Very well. She drew her Zanpakuto and held it in a one-handed reverse grip, so the blade itself extended back towards her elbow. Neutra drew his enormous weapon, and after a brief pause, they lunged at each other in tandem. Neutra's weapon threatened to behead Soifin in her first attack, but she ducked underneath, taking advantage of her short stature to get within Neutra's guard. You're careless, she mocked as she ripped open Neutra's stomach. Or tried to. Her Zanpakuto dragged across the Espada's skin, creating several sparks, but somehow Neutra remained unharmed. Barely managing to keep her surprise in check, Soifin narrowly evaded Neutra's counterattack through a flash of Shunpa. Surprised, woman? Neutra asked with a cocky grin. I cannot be cut. I have the strongest hierro of all the Espada. Interesting, Soifin remarked coolly. If my sword cannot cut you, then my sword and resolve must first be strengthened. She brought her sword up to eye level. Sting all enemies to death, Suzumabachi. Her Zanpakuto glowed yellow, before reshaping itself onto her hand and arm, forming a black gauntlet with gold decorations. Where it ended at her wrist, there was also a golden chain that linked the gauntlet with a thin, stinger-like blade that encompassed her middle finger and extended to twice her finger's length. Neutra stared for a moment before beginning to laugh. "That puny thing is your weapon?" he asked incredulously. His mirth turned in an instant towards anger. "How can you possibly expect to kill me? With that tiny blade?" He was shocked, however, when he heard a voice from behind him. "You talk too much." Unable to block in time, he attempted to dodge. As a result, he was stabbed in the left side of his back, and Neutra felt his opponent's blade push slightly into his muscle. Glancing at he had least seen Soifan, he was unsurprised to see the space empty. "You're very fast," he spat out angrily. "How dare she? No stupid woman can just cut me like that without consequences." He very purposely ignored how that very thing had happened countless times before from his former superior. "How were you able to cut me now when you were not before?" he asked, giving his regeneration ability time to work. He was unable to see the butterfly-shaped mark appear on his back. "My Zanpakuto's power is condensed into this stinger, and combined with my own skill in Hakuda it allows me to use my specialty, Nijiki Kasatsu. All I must do is pierce my enemy in the same spot twice. The first time creates a very easy-to-spot target, a homonka. The second kills you." She took a ready stance. "With such power concentrated in such a small blade, how could I not cut you? I must admit, however, that your hierro is quite tough. I nearly wasn't able to push even a little bit of my Zanpakuto's venom into you." For the first time in a long time, Neutra knew fear, a woman who had no respect for her rightful place in life, with the power to kill him so easily. Then his fear turned to anger, then to rage. "I'll kill you," he howled as his Ryatsu flared. "Pray, Santa Teresa. So this is Resurrection." Soifan observed, carefully keeping all her senses peeled for the inevitable attack from within the smoke-like Ryatsu that hid Neutra from sight. Suddenly she was cut in half from a scythe that whipped out from within the smoke. Neutra was about to laugh out in victory, until he noticed that the Shinigami Taicho was not there any longer, only the Haori that marked her as a Taicho was left, its two halves fluttering down in the currents of air. Recalling Soifan's words, and not willing to chance dying before he could even put up a proper fight, he used his upper left arm and its scythe to block the point where Soifan's strange weapon had touched previously. "You are too slow to truly match me," Soifan announced, and Neutra whirled around to see the woman he was quickly growing to loathe standing easily, calmly even, atop a nearby building. "You are unable to see past my Utsusimi technique. You are unable to even catch me with your weapon. And you cannot hurt me with yours." Neutra countered. "In my Resurrection, I'm stronger, faster, and far more difficult to cut." "I see. Assuming you are right, then we are at an impasse. However." Soifan began gathering her Ryatsu and focusing it to her arm and Zanpakuto. "I do not believe you are capable of defeating me." She dashed at the four-armed Arankar, Suzumabachi practically buzzing in her ears in its desire to kill. Meanwhile, Omida and Tesla had experimentally clashed a few times, sword against sword. Tesla's sword was slightly odd, however, in that it was a relatively short rapier, and had a chakram built into it just above the hilt. Neither opponent had been hurt as of yet, but both had been preoccupied watching their masters fight. "Looks like Soifan Taicho is going to kill your espada," Omida taunted, taking advantage of Tesla's distracted state to land a shallow cut to his right arm. For the first time since they entered the fight, Tesla looked somewhat strained and worried. "Then it appears I must defeat you more quickly, so I may aid my master. Crush, Veruga." Omida watched, impressed as Tesla's sword vanished and he began to grow taller, larger, until he resembled a heavily muscled reddish-brown giant, with a warthog mask, and yellow mane and furred legs. Without waiting for the Shinigami to ready himself, Tesla attempted to crush him with an enormous palm against the ground. The Fukutecho narrowly dodged. He's slow, but strong, my kind of fight. He gripped his Zanpakuto. Crush, Gejitsuburi. His sword glowed and reshaped itself into a large spike ball on a long chain, looking very similar to a flail. Without hesitation, he hurled it up at Tesla's face, successfully hitting his mask and breaking off the left tusk. Tesla roared in pain. The mask was a hollow's weak point, and that transferred over to even Arankar. Die, he demanded, punching with all his might straight down at Omida, who dodged easily. Despite being overweight, Omida was still fast enough to evade such a slow punch. Swinging Gejitsuburi above his head by use of his chain, Omida leapt up and flung his weapon directly into Tesla's left eye. The giant size of the fraction ensured that the mask's eye hole was large enough to accommodate. Tesla screamed in agony as the spiked ball pierced his eye and destroyed it. Unable to see any longer, he blindly swiped at Omida, who barely had to move to dodge as he pulled back on the chain, recalling his Zanpakuto. You fat ass. Tesla insulted, breathing heavily as he tried to regain his calm. How did you do this so easily? I am Onamitsukido, Omida intoned gravely. You are simply too slow to hit me, and present too large a target to miss. Focusing his Ryatsu, he used Shunpa to appear directly in front of Tesla and once more threw his Zanpakuto with all his might. Gejitsuburi shattered Tesla's mask, and punched right through his head, killing him instantly. Now to go help Soifentaicho. Meanwhile, the forces that had not yet squared off against their opponents frowned. They had felt Ichigo's already monstrous Ryatsu grow even higher, and turn very hollow like earlier, but now he seemed to have powered down, and his opponent's Ryatsu was still there. So when Ichigo used Shunpa to appear next to his allies, he was met by frowns and scowls alike. Why is your opponent not dead, Kurosaki? Yamamoto demanded. Grimmjow's not really loyal to Aizen, Ichigo explained quickly. In exchange for his life, he's agreed to protect Urahara's shop, where Inoue is standing by to heal anyone who needs it. Not a bad trade, Yamaji. Kairaku commented lazily. A hollow protectant, that place allows us to save our energy for our fights. And how have you bound him to that promise? Hitsugaya queried. I threaten to sick Ishida on him and destroy his soul entirely after I hunt him down and make him beg for death, the orange-haired wizard answered grimly. Yamamoto's eyes widened somewhat, showing his surprise for a brief moment. Before returning to his normal posture. An effective threat, then. The ice-wielding captain of the 10th Division looked at Ichigo questioningly. Kurosaki, I understand you became a hollow. Did anything good come of that? I gained a couple hollow powers, Ichigo answered Hitsugaya after a moment. I've only used Garganta, but I should be able to use Zero as well. I did notice my masked state was much stronger than the last time I faced Grimmjow. He jerked bolt upright, sensing a sudden dangerously extreme drop in Ryatsu. Chad! Before anyone could stop him, he was gone. Ulquiorra stood over Chad, with no traces of any wounds on his resurrection form. Chad, on the other hand, was panting for breath, on his hands and knees on a building as blood pooled beneath him. He'd fought hard, despite being drained of Ryatsu, but ultimately to no avail. Ulquiorra was just too fast and too resilient. Chad, I'm here, Ichigo told him fervently as he kneeled down next to his best friend. Let's go get you healed up, okay? Ichigo, he's strong, Chad whispered, coughing up more blood that joined the pool of blood on the building even as he allowed Ichigo to help him up. Be careful. His Zero Oscuro is, beyond powerful. Got it. Ichigo shunpaed away with Chad, taking him to Urahara's shop. Inoue. Help Chad, I've gotta get back out there. Inoue snapped to attention and immediately called upon her fairies, silently creating a Soten Kishun field around Chad, who obediently lay down. You'll be okay, Chad-kun. Ichigo, seeing that everything was taken care of, shunpaed back to where Ulquiorra was waiting. Here we are again. Indeed, Ulquiorra agreed. No chance I can convince you to turn away from Aizen then. Never got a chance to fight Yami. No. However, your friend, Sato Yasutora, he has become quite strong. And his Ryatsu is strange, it is as though I can taste his emotions on the air, Okuiora told Ichigo. He surprised me in that he was able to mildly injure me in this form using his most powerful attack and a clever strategy, but my regenerative abilities and high speed kept him from landing more than glancing blows afterwards. So, now what? You've got what you were looking for, right? A better understanding of a human's emotions? Ichigo pointed out. Indeed, I have learned much with my interactions with Sato Yasutora. However, there is still more to learn. Okuiora took a battle stance. Come, Kurosaki Ichigo. Show me your own will to protect, your own will to attack. I'll show you more than that, Ichigo promised, reaching up to pull on his Jillian mask once more, continuing to speak as he did so. I'll show you my instinct. He glared up at Okuiora through hollow amber eyes that glowed eerily from within the mask, spinning Tensa Zangetsu by the chain once more as he flared his Ryatsu to its fullest, making Okuiora's eyes widen imperceptibly in surprise. Prepare yourself, Okuiora. As you wish, Kurosaki Ichigo. Suddenly the air was saturated even further with Ryatsu, this time from Okuiora, before Ichigo made the first move and dashed forward, a black Getsuga emanating dangerously from his sword. Let's take him down, Zangetsu. He felt Tensa Zangetsu thrum in his hand, and then he was thrown into combat. Kira Izuru, with the help of Ishida, had Avirama Redder on his knees, his head bowed. Kira calmly walked to the eagle-like fraction, Wabasuk in his hand. Ishida floated alongside him on a platform based on his Hirenkyaku. How? Avirama asked as he struggled to move any part of his body. His name suited him, his body was almost completely covered in blood-red feathers. The only parts of his body not covered in plumage were his tattooed chest and his face, upon which a large beak had formed. He had also sprouted enormous wings, and his feet had reshaped into talons. What did you do to me? Kira indicated his released Zanpakuto. My sword, Wabasuk, has a unique ability to double the weight of anything I strike. While Ishida-san fought you in aerial combat, I snuck in and struck those feathers of yours over and over again. If your feathers had been as light as normal feathers, I would have been helpless. Realization dawned upon Avirama's face as everything made sense. But my feathers are metallic and heavy, made to slice anyone I swoop past. Such an underhanded ability. Underhanded? Kira shook his head. There is nothing underhanded about it. Oh yes, you feel that fighting is meant to be heroic and exciting. Yes, and to fight makes the blood sing. It is fun, and honorable. Avirama agreed. There is such a rush of adrenaline, the glee of combat, the triumph of proving yourself stronger. I cannot feel that way. My division, Squad 3 of the Gotii 13, has the marigold as our symbol. It embodies despair. War is ugly and depressing. There is nothing exciting about it. We fight to live. War is full of despair, full of sorrow and darkness. People fear war for that reason. Out of all the Zanpakutos there are, I feel that my sword that best represents that philosophy. He held his sword up to the light, showing its strange shape. It was a straight blade up to a point, where it bent to a perpendicular angle, and again several inches later to run parallel to the first part of the blade. The sharp edge was on the inside of the hook-like shape, while the outside was blunted. Raise your head, Wabasuk. That command is so fitting to my division. When I strike you with my blade, I double your weight, again and again until all you can do is kneel, no longer able to stand. No longer able to even lift your sword. And then Wabasuk's power forces you to bow your head, as if in apology. And that is why it is called Wabasuk, the penitent one. He stood over the helpless Avirama and gently but firmly brought his sword to go around the fraction's neck so the inside edge, the sharp edge, was directly against his skin. W8. Avirama pleaded. A warrior does not beg for his life. And with a tug, Kira beheaded the Arankar. An interesting philosophy, Ishida commented. Seems to be counter to Squad 11's. Of course, Kira agreed. Most squads have their own philosophy. Squad 3's is despair, Squad 2's is efficient dispatch, Squad 11's is the love of fighting. By having contrary philosophies working together, we are able to take in all kinds of Shinigami and have them work together. They paused as they felt a heavy, oppressive Ryatsu fill the air. Kurosaki. Ishida recognized. Kurosaki Ichigo is the owner of this Ryatsu? Kira asked. Surprised. It feels so much like a Hollow's. Yeah, but be prepared for even more, the Quincy warned, looking to where he felt the Ryatsu coming from. He's facing Ulquiorra, Quarta Espada. Then the Ryatsu intensified as Ulquiorra released his own Ryatsu. Kira nearly had to fall to his knees, as he gasped for breath. Ishida, seeing Kira's impairment, grabbed him and used Herenkyaku to move them both further away. As Kira recovered, Ishida Yuryu looked towards his rival once more, struggling with his emotions. How is it that you're still so much further than me? He gripped his bow tightly. You've gotten so strong, Kurosaki Ichigo. And you'll only grow stronger, while I am bound by my vow to give up the life of a Quincy as soon as this conflict is over, he thought bitterly. No, Yuryu. It is good that Kurosaki has grown so strong. That way you can entrust him with the protection of our comrades after all this is done. But no matter how many times he told himself that, Ishida still felt the bitter jealousy circulating, gripping his chest with its icy tendrils. Ayasagawa Yumachika finished off Charlotte Coolhorn's Resurrection with the true form of his Shirkai, Ruriairo Kujaku, from within the Arankar's Rosa Blanca technique. Ruriairo Kujaku manifested as several vines that wrapped around the opponent and drained the captive's Ryatsu, using it to make several flowers slowly bloom. I have to thank you again, Charlotte Coolhorn, Yumachika commented easily. Without your Rosa Blanca technique to hide us from all sight and Ryatsu sensing, I would not have revealed my true Shirkai. Why didn't you use it outside? Charlotte asked, defeated. His Resurrection had changed his clothing primarily, giving him white underwear that connected to a pink miniskirt, and a white crop top with extended shoulder pads, which had a pink cape. His bone mask had reformed into a tiara which settled just in front of his curly hair that he wore down to mid-back, and he wore white disc-like bracelets. Given Charlotte's muscular frame, he had the form of a very masculine bodybuilder, all his muscles clearly defined, he looked like an especially disturbing crossdresser. The Shinigami paused for a moment to reflect before answering. I am a proud member of Squad 11, and that squad prides themselves on having pure melee Zanpakuto. Having a Kido type, like my own, would get me kicked out. So I disguised my Zanpakuto, by giving it a nickname. You see, my Zanpakuto's favorite color is azure, Ruriairo, and its least favorite is wisteria, Fuji. By calling him Fuji Kujaku, he pouts and doesn't show his true power, instead manifesting as what you saw earlier, for identical sickle-like blades held on a hinge at the hilt. Charlotte smiled. I see now, your Zanpakuto is beautiful, in both its forms. Yumachika repressed a shiver, while he freely admitted he liked feeling beautiful, and he personally felt that Ruriairo Kujaku was equally so, having Charlotte compliment them felt like the cross-dressing Arankar was hitting on him. Yes, he is, he agreed, watching the flowers attached to his Zanpakuto's vines slowly bloom, draining Charlotte's energy. And now, die in your own technique. With that, the flowers fully bloomed, and Charlotte slumped over, dead from having all his Ryatsu drained. He quickly began to disintegrate, until the fraction was gone. Yumachika quickly resealed his Zanpakuto before the Rosa Blanca completely faded, thereby hiding Ruriairo Kujaku's true nature. It's about time you got out of there, he heard. Turning around, he found Kuchiki Rukia waiting impatiently. I came to help, but couldn't break into whatever that technique was. Is your opponent dead? Yumachika glanced backwards at where Charlotte had died. Yes, he died a beautiful death. Rukia shook her head, she'd never understand Yumachika and his obsession with beauty. Never mind that. We should take turns protecting the pillar. Sounds lovely. How has everyone else done? He glanced around. It seemed that Kira had finished, as had Hisagi. Renji appeared to be finishing off Ikiku's opponent, who was presumably in Resurrection judging from the enormous whale-like form. Even as Yumachika watched, Hihio Zabumaru unleashed a Higa Zeko, disassembling into its segments, which leapt at the Arankar and stabbed him in several places, including his head. Seeing that the fraction was finished, he looked for and found Ikiku, who appeared to be heavily injured, nearly unconscious. While he was annoyed on Ikiku's behalf that Renji had taken over his fight, Yumachika was glad that his friend was alive. Glancing towards the other two towers, Yumachika noted that Kira had teamed up with the Quincy, Ishida Yuryu, and seemed uninjured from his fight. Hisagi and Matsumoto looked as though they had finished a few minutes prior. With a flash of Shunpa, Yumachika appeared next to Ikiku. "You still alive there?" Ikiku coughed out some blood. "Yeah. I'm alive. Remind me to kick Renji's but later." "Right," Yumachika agreed, pulling Ikiku up and supporting him as best he could. "You should take him to Urahara's shop," Rukia suggested. "Inoue's there, and her special healing ability will get him fixed up in no time." Thanking her for the suggestion, Yumachika took his comrade down to the shop. That taken care of, Rukia met up with Renji, who had resealed his Zanpakuto back into Shirkai form. "You all right there, Renji?" "I'm fine. Not even injured," Renji reassured her. "My opponent was strong, but slow." He looked his childhood friend over real quick, assessing her Ryatsu and looking for potential injuries. "You didn't fight at all?" "No, Yumachika was trapped in some technique that kept him and his enemy isolated from the outside. I couldn't break in." Rukia looked worriedly in the direction that she felt Ichigo's hollowified Ryatsu coming from. "Do you know who he's fighting?" "Ichigo." Renji shook his head. "Can't tell for sure, but I'll bet you anything it's an Espada." The ice wielder rolled her eyes. "Of course he is, dumbass. I could tell that simply from the Ryatsu." Renji smirked. "He can take care of himself. Listen, I've got to stay here and continue to defend Ikiku's pillar while he recovers. The others have returned to theirs, but until Yumachika gets back you should watch over his." Rukia's face hardened as she nodded, before turning and running back to the appropriate tower, taking on a guarding position. Baragan's face was a reflection of utter fury as his left hand crushed part of his bone throne. "Oh. Sheet," one of his remaining fraction cursed with wide eyes, sensing Baragan's rising Ryatsu. "Sire, please remain in your throne and allow us to handle them," the other begged. Baragan paused, but he regained his calm expression as he once more sat back. "Kill them. Do not leave a single ant alive, or there will be nowhere for you to return to." He gave his subordinates a piercing, judgmental stare. "Do not disappoint me," he uttered with the weight of a dictator. It did not need to be said that if they did disappoint him, Baragan would kill his fraction himself. "Apache, Sunday through Sunday," Mila rose, Haribel suddenly called out. 3 more Arankar, presumably her fraction, rushed to her side. "Attempt to destroy the towers yourselves, but do not interfere with Baragan's fraction's battles." "Yes ma'am," they saluted, and in tandem all 5 fraction vanished in a burst of sonido. "Should we send a Taicho along to help out?" Yukitake suggested. "Just in case, of course." "Who would we send to fight them?" Yamamoto asked heavily. He wanted to reserve his heavy hitters, Yukitake, Kairaku, Kamamura and himself, for the Espada, as well as their Shinigami masters. Kamamura understandably wanted to save his strength for fighting his old friend, the traitor Tosen, and it was likely that Hisagi would abandon his post to aid him. Kira would most likely want to fight his old Taicho as well, Ikamaru. Yamamoto's attention was split between watching the Arankar before him, maintaining the fire that separated Aizen, Tosen and Jin from their subordinates, and keeping tabs on Kurosaki Ichigo's fight with Ulquiorra. Speaking of Kurosaki, he hoped that the substitute Shinigami was capable of finishing the Quarta Espada and still be able to take on Aizen. I think we should let the tower's defenders take care of themselves, Kairaku offered lazily. Like you said, Yamaji, they are strong warriors, and they have backup now. I don't think we're going to get a choice, Hitsugaya said grimly, eyeing the Espada. Indeed, they were readying themselves for combat. It appeared that everyone save Baragan was moving to draw their weapons, or simply raising their Ryatsu in challenge. The tower defenders will have to take care of themselves, Kamamura growled dangerously, drawing his own sword. However, just as they were about to split up to fight their battles, everyone stopped when they felt an overwhelming Ryatsu wash over them from the direction of Ichigo's battle with Ulquiorra. The roar of a hollow echoed in the sudden silence. Chapter 17, Defect. Ichigo, garbed in his Jillian mask and already in Bankai, refused to let up against Ulquiorra, Tensa Zangetsu clashing against energy javelins that the Quarta Espada kept generating. His sword was almost constantly raging with the power of a Getsuga Tensho, which Ichigo suspected was the only reason why he was consistently breaking Ulquiorra's weapons. If it were as simple as melee combat, Ichigo had confidence that he could win eventually. There were 3 problems, however. First, Ulquiorra was just too DMN fast to make more than glancing blows. Hold still, he demanded, slashing and releasing a silent Getsuga. Now why would I do that? The Arrancar asked him tonelessly as he once more abused his Sonido technique to vanish and reappear a distance away, out of range of the Getsuga. I have no wish to die just yet. Ichigo lunged at him, frustrated as he witnessed Ulquiorra's minor wound. He'd managed one on his arm just a minute ago, closed up at a speed comparable to his own regenerative abilities. That was problem number 2, Ulquiorra too had high-speed regeneration and just as insane levels of Ryatsu as Ichigo did, which meant that minor wounds meant nothing and major wounds were only temporary. He'd need to cut off Ulquiorra's head or something equally fatal, and even then the hollowified Vizard wasn't sure that Ulquiorra couldn't regenerate from that, if only a limited number of times. As Ichigo flew towards Ulquiorra as quickly as he could, he had to dodge the Arrancar's own attacks. He had a tendency of firing a mixture of teal-colored Seros and energy javelins at the Vizard. While Ichigo was certain he could relatively easily withstand a Sero, he'd already gotten cut by the javelin before, and Ulquiorra was extremely good at hiding the spears within a Sero. That ability happened to be problem number 3. The result? An extremely annoying battle, one that worried Ichigo immensely. He had no idea how long his Jillian mask would last, and he tried not to think about it, thanks to his Vizard training. If this battle becomes one of endurance, Ulquiorra will win, Ichigo thought grimly as he dodged yet another javelin. Fine then. He wants long range, let's see how he likes me throwing weapons at him. Flipping Zangetsu onto his ring finger and spinning it quickly for a second as he danced around the spears of death, the substitute Shinigami hurled it at his foe. Getsuga Tenshu, he roared with all his might. Foolish. Ulquiorra held on to his newly regenerated weapon and covered it in his own Ryatsu, using it to simply deflect Zangetsu. What can you do without your weapon? Who says I don't have a weapon? Ichigo breathed, right behind Ulquiorra. He'd materialized his inner Hollow's Tensa Zangetsu in his left hand, and used his even more enhanced Shuanpa to reappear behind the Espada. Without hesitation, he viciously slashed at Ulquiorra's back and wings. Predictably, Ulquiorra managed to turn around in time to block with his javelin, but Ichigo merely smirked behind his mask. Somehow sensing that something was off, Ulquiorra suddenly realized, the other sword. Too late. Ulquiorra had been impaled by Ichigo's black Tensa Zangetsu from behind, the blade still raging with a very powerful Getsuga Tensho as it pierced his right wing and lung. Ugh, he grunted, realizing he was in a very difficult position. If he tried to move away, the sword in his back would only open the wounds further. Clever. You distracted me with that white sword of yours, while you pulled back on the black chain to return that sword to you, while I was in the way. Ichigo's grin only widened further. Now that I've got you trapped here, it's time to take your FNG head off. The white Tensa Zangetsu thrummed in his hand as Ichigo pumped Ryatsu into it to trigger another powerful Getsuga Tensho. Siro Oscuro. Ichigo didn't even have time to register what Okuiora had said before he found himself being pushed back, his white Tensa Zangetsu battling against Okuiora's black Siro. Chad was right. He realized as the Siro managed to overwhelm his defenses and completely engulfed him. Thankfully, Ichigo had had just enough time to harden his Ryatsu further, to keep from being too hurt. His mask, however, was relatively weak and began to crumble. By the time the Siro was finished, he had only the top left part of his mask left on him. Further, Okuiora had by then disengaged himself from the black Tensa Zangetsu, and was waiting patiently. "You are quite strong," Okuiora complimented as Ichigo irritably yanked back on the chain again, returning his primary sword to his hand. He waited until the wizard had also ripped the air in front of his face again, regenerating his mask. "That's interesting. I was unaware you could repair your mask. That is quite an advantage you have over most hollows." "I would imagine so. Dmnit. Ichigo cursed mentally, knowing he had missed a chance to finish off the espada. The wound's probably already mostly healed by now. I need time and a calm mind to figure out a plan. I'm Bayaek. Could this get any worse?" Ichigo couldn't help but think. "I ask for a calm mind, and I get my insane hollow half. The universe hates me. Oi, what's going on?" Before his host could answer, Cazador quickly took stock of the situation. "Ah, you're fighting Okuiora, I see. That's probably why I came back so quick, so much hollow Ryatsu in the air. I did not want to reveal this, especially where Aizen could find out, but I do not see much choice," Okuiora said quietly. "You are unexpectedly strong, and I could very well die in this fight if I do not unleash my true form. Pray to whatever you believe in, Kurosaki Ichigo, you will not survive this, the form of true despair." "What the hell are you talking about?" "Resurrección, segunda etapa." At those words, Okuiora changed before Ichigo's very eyes. The coat he'd worn in Resurrección seemed to have vanished under the sheer Ryatsu of this new form. In mere moments, the espada's changes completed. His hole had widened somewhat, and was now dripping a black liquid down his front, a liquid that Ichigo suspected was some variant of blood. His waist, legs and arms had covered themselves in fur as black as pitch, and both hands and feet had become more bestial, forming claws and talons respectively. A thin, onyx tail had also grown, but Ichigo could hardly see it as he was preoccupied with the long, slightly curved horns that Okuiora's mask remnants had morphed into. The espada's facial markings had elongated as well, but before Ichigo could make any more observations he was hit by Okuiora's extremely dense Ryatsu, which had changed somewhat. And just as the Arrancar had foretold, Ichigo felt despair. Sheet. Yeah, that's an OF- moment. I am the only one of the espada to have reached a second Resurrección form. Not even Aizen has seen it, Okuiora boasted, with the tiniest traces of pride detectable in his voice. I don't have a choice. Let's see how long this lasts. You're not the only one hiding their true power, Okuiora, Ichigo whispered. Cazador, you ready? That depends. Are you ready to take a level in badass? Ichigo smiled tightly. Then let's see just how badass we can get. Hooking the white Tensa Zangetsu on his pinky so it wouldn't get in the way, Ichigo slowly reached up for his mask with his left hand. What are you talking about, Kurosaki Ichigo? Okuiora asked plainly. You already have your mask, and you are in Bankai. How much more power could you possibly have? Enough. Summoning hollow Ryatsu to his fingers, he tore the Jillian mask right off his face, only to reveal his Ajucha's mask. Okuiora was taken aback by the sudden and dramatic rise in Ichigo's power, and even more so when Ichigo opened both his and his mask's mouth wide and gave a hollow roar. The wizard struggled to remain in full control of his body. The hollow's instincts, to kill, to consume all souls in the area, were nigh overwhelming. Enough. He clamped down hard, forcibly taking full control of his body. Now that that's taken care of, I have an espada to dismember. Cazador. As your king I demand you dampen the lust to feed on other souls. As you wish, king. Though he'd never tell Ichigo, Cazador de la Luna was impressed at how quickly he'd recover control. By pulling on the Ajucha's mask, Ichigo was subjected to the raw hunger every newborn Ajucha's feels. They must eat other hollows near constantly, in order to keep from degrading back into a Jillian. It is only after the first couple of dozen other Ajuchas they eat that most hollows manage to focus on a different picture than always eating, and have a little time between feedings. Cazador had a bit of a buffer on his side when he became an Ajuchas himself. As an Arrancar, he'd kept from using his Resurrection form except when completely needed. As a result, he wasn't using his full power, and needed to eat far less. Ichigo had no such protection, he was at his full power. With his Ajucha's mask, and both Tensa Zangetsu, the Vizard was unleashing Ryatsu that rivaled Okuyura's Segunda at top of form. For his liege to master himself and the mind-consuming instinct to eat other souls within seconds, Cazador had to acknowledge that Ichigo's will and determination were quite strong. It's moments like this that remind me just why I'm not sad I lost to him. He's like a freaking force of nature, Cazador thought to himself. I don't know how long I've got. Ichigo reminded himself grimly. Best make it count. He lunged at Okuyura, both his swords lit up with the destructive light of the Getsuga Tensho. Both blades were met by a strange weapon of pulsing, glowing yellow-white energy. It took the shape of yet another spear, but Ichigo could tell instantly that this was on a whole new level of power. Of course, the fact that both enhanced Tensa Zangetsu had been stopped cold by this weapon was also noteworthy. This is my Lanza del Relampago, Okuyura introduced. I don't know how you have suddenly increased your power yet again, or why your mask has changed. But allow me to instruct you in despair. Ciro Oscuro. Ichigo vanished as the attack annihilated the space he'd been in mere milliseconds previous. He reappeared behind Okuyura and slashed mightily, only to be blocked once more by Okuyura's lance. You must think me a fool to fall for that again. Ichigo raged. Getsuga Tensho. Okuyura found himself being pushed back by an enormous Getsuga that engulfed his vision. Only his weapon held back the destructive Moonfang. It was a few moments before he managed to, with some effort, deflect it upwards. Somehow, his opponent's power rivaled his own now, and he would be hard-pressed to defeat him. Taking advantage of the distance his opponent had inadvertently created, Okuyura aimed carefully and threw his lance at Ichigo. It flew at speeds that even Okuyura had difficulty following. This was his ultimate attack. The Lanza del Relampago, or Lance of the Lightning, was extraordinarily powerful, and lightning-quick, just like its name. As a result, however, it was extremely difficult to aim. Ichigo barely registered that he was being attacked, but he didn't get a chance to move. The lance, fortunately, did not hit him directly, but it did tear out a gash in his right arm. So fast. Knowing he couldn't afford to have any part of his body weakened, Ichigo sent a rush of hollow Ryatsu to his arm to mend it, noting but ignoring the explosion that he heard occur someplace behind him. Okuyura frowned at missing with his most powerful technique. This technique is so difficult to control. He trailed off when he saw Ichigo's arm heal rapidly. I see. So you two have high-speed regeneration, he observed. Yeah. You do too. We appear to be about evenly matched, wouldn't you say? If we continue to fight, we will only wear each other out, Ichigo said, somehow feeling that his Ajucha's mask was still holding strong. He had some time left. I agree with your assessment of the situation. Somehow or other you've gained a great deal of power since the last time we met. I find myself curious, just what are you? I'm human, Ichigo responded quietly. Human, with the powers of Shinigami and Hollow. I see. Okuyura turned his back. The Vizard blinked, and suddenly Okuyura was in his pre-resurrection state, sheathing his sword. I believe you will succeed against Aizen, Kurosaki Ichigo. My encounter with Sato Yasutora has taught me the lengths to which a human will go, and the power they gain from emotions. I would die facing you, I am certain. My segunda etapa form, the form of true despair, had no hold on you. Additionally, I cannot fully control my Lanza del Relampago. You, however, are my equal with that mask of yours, and have mastered your Getsuga Tensho. Facing you, Kurosaki Ichigo, would only waste both our time, and you will require all the power you have to fight Aizen. He opened a garganta with a wave of his hand. You will see me again. With that, Ulquiorra stepped through his rip in space and closed it behind him. Ichigo blinked behind the mask before dismissing his white Tensa Zangetsu, which dissipated into spirit particles. Well, that was rather anticlimactic. Perhaps, but you gotta admit, for an emotionless guy like him, that was a rather dramatic speech. Cazador gave his input. Fair enough. Ichigo reached up and removed his Ajucha's mask, and promptly fell to his knees in midair, gasping for air as his strength vanished and the remnants of Ulquiorra's segunda etapa Ryatsu gripped him with chilling fear. Okay, note to self, powering down so quickly, is a bad idea. Ichigo panted, slowly recovering as the Ryatsu dissipated. Several moments later, he was back on his feet and looking around. He was impressed at the destruction his short fight with Ulquiorra had caused. Several blocks had been utterly annihilated between Ichigo's Getsugas and Ulquiorra's various javelins, and there was a rather large crater where the Lanza del Relampago had exploded. Not for the first time, he was glad that this was merely a replacement town. Where to? Ichigo closed his eyes and reached out with his Ryatsu sense. Not sensing anyone in particular danger at the moment, he decided to check in with Yamamoto. After all, suppose I should reassure them that I'm still here after I went almost completely hollow. Not bothering to dismiss his Bankai, Ichigo vanished in flash of Shuunpa. Meanwhile, Soifun and Neutra were leaping around, trying to hit each other in their dance of death. Soifun was far too fast to hit, but Neutra was keeping her from being able to hit him by forcing her back with his 6 scythes. It was a true test of speed versus power. Neither of them had been distracted for a moment by the enormous quantity of hollow Ryatsu coming from Ichigo's battle with Ulquiorra. They didn't really care about anything at this point but the battle, and the Ryatsu wasn't so strong as to hinder their movements from this distance. On her part, Soifun was getting rather irritated. She did not want to unleash her Bankai against such a foe. She was certain that Shirkai would be enough. If only she could keep Neutra from moving. That's it. Soifun could have smacked herself. Bakudo. Leaping back out of range, the leader of the Onamitsukido channeled Ryatsu to her fingers. Bakudo 4, Heinawa. Neutra was so surprised by the change in tactics that he was unable to dodge, and all 6 of his arms were suddenly entangled, held at his sides. Sheet. I'm defenseless. He broke the Bakudo in a second, but it was too late. Soifun had gathered as much Ryatsu as she could on short notice into Suzumabachi and struck out. While Neutra's Resurrection had cleansed his body of all wounds, the Homonka was still on his back, and that's exactly where she struck, successfully piercing the Espada's tough hierro. The Homonka began to glow, and then it spread out, swiftly covering Neutra's entire body. Soifun quickly Shuunpaed away from Neutra's retaliatory swipe. It's over. No. I cannot be killed by a mere woman. Neutra screamed as he felt his body breaking down from Suzumabachi's poison. You beach. I'll come back and I will kill you. Mere moments later, however, he crumbled into dust. TCH, pathetic. Noting vaguely that Omida had also triumphed, Soifun turned on her heel and promptly Shuunpaed back to Yamamoto, Omida following. On the way, she was surprised to see Kurosaki Ichigo also heading the same direction, and looking completely unharmed. Silently, they began going side by side, looking for tactical advantage against ambush through safety in numbers. Keh. I would have thought that you'd be in tatters by now, Kurosaki. Especially since after almost every fight Soul Society's recorded with you, you need medical attention. Predictably, Ichigo turned to glare at her. You faced the Quinta Espada, Neutra, who specialized in brute strength. I faced the Quarta Espada, Ulquiorra, who specialized in speed and regeneration. Even if I was in tatters, you still wouldn't have any room to talk. At least I took down my foe with merely my shirkai, Soifan bit out. Stupid brat, you flaunt that bankai of yours in every DMN fight. You've grown too reliant on it. Besides, if there was only one difference in rank, how large could the difference be? Ichigo snorted. How far are you from Yamamoto? He's your Soteicho, which is only one rank from Taicho, isn't it? Or would you prefer a comparison of Fukuteicho to Taicho? Oh. Soifan challenged. Surely you haven't forgotten the day Kuchiki Rukia was to be executed, the wizard growled. I took down 3 Fukuteicho with my bare hands in seconds, but nearly died fighting Byakuya. That shut her up. After a few moments, as they made their next Shunpa jump together, Ichigo sighed. Listen, I don't know what you've got against me, but I have several things against you, Kurosaki, Soifan interrupted. I think you're a security risk. I think it's too dangerous to keep you alive with your hollow side, especially as you've confirmed you've become a full-fledged hollow before. I think you're too brash, too arrogant, too young, and too emotional for someone to wield Taicho-level power. You don't respect Soul Society law. You resort to your bankai for every serious fight. You don't respect anyone, and don't hesitate to trample on our pride. I don't like you, Kurosaki Ichigo. But right now you're an asset to Soul Society, and needed to help defeat Aizen. And for that I'll tolerate you. But if Yamamoto Soteicho ever suggests you need to be eliminated, I will be the first to line up for the job. Ichigo gave a bitter chuckle. Typical. Somehow, that one word got under the Taicho's skin. And just what do you mean by that? The wizard and Shinigami locked gazes. I'm saying it's typical of Soul Society to destroy that which it doesn't like. The Bount. The Quincy. The Mod Souls. Your own Shinigami who, through no fault of their own, acquired hollow powers. That's your default response, isn't it? Don't like it? Kill it. Doesn't matter if you created it or not. In that way you're no better than barbarians. Ichigo turned up his glare as hard as he could, the Ryatsu he constantly leaked becoming denser and heavier with killing intent. Behind them, Omida was affected and looked at the wizard with fear. I'll tell you the same thing I told Byakuya that day on Tsukioku Hill. I gained this bankai to trample on Soul Society's pride, and to do whatever it took to protect my friends. And I warn you, Soifan, Taicho of Squad 2 of the Godai, if you ever come after me or my friends, you will need Yamamoto Genryusai himself at your side to save you, because I swear I will come at you with all of my power. With that, he turned on his heel and Shunpaed away from them, choosing to go help his friends over reporting to the Soteicho. He was too angry at the moment to have anything to do with the Godai. As soon as Ichigo was gone, Soifan continued on her way to Yamamoto. She easily dismissed Kurosaki's words against Soul Society. TCH. The brat's too young to understand why those decisions were made. The Bount were a threat to Soul Society and lived forever only by consuming the souls of humans. The Quincy were a threat to the spiritual balance because they destroy souls. The Mod Souls were a crime against ethics. We shouldn't just take human corpses and force them to fight hollows for us. The Shinigami who illegally obtained hollow powers became hollows. And everyone understands that we have to purify the hollows so they can re-enter the cycle of reincarnation. I swear I will come at you with all of my power. Soifan repressed an involuntary shiver of what could only be fear before shunting it to the back of her mind. None of that will matter if we die today, she told herself firmly, focusing on the coming fights. Renji and Rukia stood back to back, facing off against Haribel's 3 fraction, Apache, Mila Rose, and Sunday through Sunday. Apache was of a slight build, very pale with a unicorn-like horn for her mask remnant. Her eyes were 2 different colors, her right was an icy blue, her left amber. Her hair was a much darker shade of blue, almost indigo, but her Zanpakuto was nowhere to be seen. Mila Rose, however, was almost Apache's exact opposite. Her appearance was very much like the stereotypical Amazonian, dark-skinned, well-endowed, tall, but obviously quite strong. Her mask remnant was also atop her head, but took the shape of a three-section crown going back over her long wavy hair. An additional part of her mask was present as a necklace, while her zanpakuto was an extremely large broadsword. Where Apache's outfit was moderately conservative, Mila Rose had modified it to take full advantage of her BRSTS size. Finally, Sunday through Sunday was quite slender, with long straight olive green hair that ran down to the middle of her back. There were 3 pink dots lined vertically on her right cheek, and her mask fragment took the appearance of 3 hair clips. Her outfit had also been modified, now taking the form of a dress with exceedingly long sleeves that went past the hands, much like the traditional Japanese priestess. Her zanpakuto had yet to be seen. The 3 of them had appeared almost out of nowhere around Rukia, possibly seeing her as the weakest target. Upon seeing this, Renji had rushed to her aid, managing to save her from a zero to the back from Sunday through Sunday while Rukia fought Mila Rose. Seeing as the 3 Arankar had already encircled them, the 2 childhood friends immediately took a back-to-back position, releasing their shurikai. "Any ideas?" the tattooed Fukatecho muttered under his breath, knowing full well that Rukia would hear him. "Maybe. Have you mastered that trick of yours? The one you've been working on lately?" "Yeah, but I don't see how it applies here." Renji replied, confused. Rukia allowed a small smirk that resembled Ichigo's own. "I'll provide a few pillars. Think you can handle the rest?" "No problem." "What are you 2 dead Shinigami talking about?" Apache demanded. "You know, Shinigami are almost always dead to begin with," Mila Rose teased. "After all, how else would they end up in Soul Society?" "F you, Mila Rose. You know goddamn well what I meant." Apache. Sunday through Sunday scolded. "You shouldn't give them any opportunities. These 2 are strong and you know it. We might even have to bring out our pet." The high-strung Frachin scoffed. "Yeah, right. Renji, I'm going to need you to protect me for a little bit," Rukia asked quietly. "What I'm about to do is going to take quite a bit of my Ryatsu and concentration." Renji nodded, which the diminutive ice user felt due to their size difference. "I've got your back, Rukia." She closed her eyes and began calling up as much Ryatsu as she could. She's doing something." Apache noticed and yelled out. "We know. So stop her, we're kinda being blocked by her partner." Mila Rose replied back. "Sunday through Sunday, go help Apache, I'll keep the redhead occupied." "Oh no you don't." "Howl, Zabumaru." Though his shurikai was already released, Renji couldn't help calling on his zanpakuto. It was a matter of pride. To all 3 Frachin's surprise, the chainsword circled around the 2 of them dozens of times, forming a small protective sphere of blades, guided by Renji's Ryatsu. All 3 Arankar began hacking at it, and Renji focused his Ryatsu into Zabumaru. "Hold on there, partner. Rukia's almost done. Do not worry about us, Renji. We are fine for the moment, as long as they don't begin blasting zeros at us." Unfortunately, after a few strikes Sunday through Sunday had that exact idea, and after relaying it to her fellow Frachin, the 3 charged up zeros and fired them at once at the same spot on Zabumaru, making it howl and hiss in pain from its ape and snake heads within Renji's inner world. "Renji! About time." Renji called Zabumaru back to its initial shurikai state, freeing them both. "Whatever you're going to do it quick." "Some no mai," Rukia intoned, but her voice was doubly layered with something that made Zabumaru stiffen in recognition. "Tsukishiro." Dozens of ice pillars appeared around them in a circle, forcing all 3 Frachin to dodge out of the way repeatedly to keep from being frozen solid. Rukia fell to one knee in midair. "Go, Renji," she whispered, trying to adjust to the severe Ryatsu depletion. "Thank you, Sodi no Shirayuki, for your help." "Anytime, Rukia. I am glad to help." Renji's eyes widened in awe of what he had just observed. Rukia had truly outdone herself there. Well, I'm not going to waste the opportunity. He shot Zabumaru out towards Apache, who easily dodged. What she didn't see was that Zabumaru had been deflected and redirected by the impact with the ice pillar behind the Arrancar. Now it was subtly aiming towards Sunday through Sunday, who instinctually realized the danger and dodged as well. Watch out! Sunday through Sunday warned Mila Rose, who had her back to the oncoming blade. From there it became a fun game, for Renji, of trapping the three of them in a cage of Zabumaru's blades. Finally, it was complete was the Zanpakuto's end blade hooked onto one of the previous segments. The pineapple-haired Shinigami smirked as he prepared to pull it tight and shred the three fraction. Gotcha. We don't have a choice. Apache cried out, pulling off her bracelets, which revealed themselves to be chakrams and her Zanpakuto. Move, Sierva. Devour, Leona. Mila Rose yelled, for once agreeing with Apache. Strangle to death, Anaconda. The energy emitted from the triple resurrection was enough to push Zabumaru's blades far enough apart for them to escape. Frowning at the lost opportunity, he quickly took stock of their new forms. Apache was now completely covered, from neck to toe, in fur. Dangerous-looking antlers topped her otherwise unchanged head. Mila Rose's warrior outfit had dissolved and had been replaced with garments made of hollow bone that barely covered everything. It consisted of an armored thong, thigh-high boots, gloves that reached her elbow, and two claw-looking pieces that supported her BRSTS while concealing just enough to remain within the bounds of decency. The bone necklace she had worn had expanded into neck protection, while the crown morphed into a headdress that had long golden hair reaching down to the small of her back. Sunday through Sunday now resembled a naga, a mythical creature whose bottom half was an extremely large snake, while from the waist up was a woman. Sheet, he muttered. Rukia, you alright? Things just got worse. You don't say. Rukia responded sarcastically, but she nevertheless got up to fight. The pillars are still up. Why can't you just trap them again? I don't mind trying, but I get the feeling that they're too strong to be held by my Shirkai any longer, Renji explained. Then why not go Bankai? Keh. They're not strong enough to need to go to such extremes. We just need to work together. UBSTRDS. Apache screamed at them. Mila Rose, Sunday through Sunday, let's bring out our pet. Yes, let's, Sunday through Sunday agreed. Mila Rose merely nodded. What happened next stunned Renji and Rukia into silence. All three tore their left arms off and then threw them together a small distance away from them. Quimera Parka. There was a bright light, and the three arms swirled together to form a gigantic being. He resembled a satyr somewhat, as from the waist down he had deer legs ending in hooves, while the torso was that of a highly muscular human. However, the being also had a long snake tail, a deer skull for a mask, and an extremely long mane. He let loose a hollow scream before charging at Renji with a speed that belied his size. Renji, on the other hand, was the Fukutecho of one of the fastest Shinigami in Seoul society, Kuchiki Byakuya, who had trained from a young age with the goddess of flash, Yoruchi herself. He vanished in a flicker of Shuunpa and reappeared behind the monster, swinging Zabumaru to take off the being's head. Incredibly, the chimera bent to the side at an angle that would have made the Fukutecho wince in sympathy in any other circumstance, then twisted and punched. Too close and too surprised to dodge, Renji braced himself as best he could, using his Zanpakuto to block. He grunted with effort, putting all his strength into keeping that enormously strong hand from hitting him. Rukia. Freeze the DMN thing. Tsugi no Mai. Hakuren. Another avalanche of ice erupted from Sodi no Shirayuki, engulfing the beast in ice. However, the ice hardly slowed down the monster, which broke free in mere seconds. However, it was long enough for Renji to Shuunpa to Rukia's side. Heh, you'll never defeat our pet, Alon, like that. Apache taunted. Alon is our ultimate weapon, Sunday through Sunday cut in. With all the strength, speed and ruthlessness of an espada. He's never been beaten. Though we haven't really tested him out against any espada. Milorose pointed out. We don't exactly want to kill our mistress, Haribel-sama, and Aizen-sama forbade us from attacking any other espada. Renji seemed to have garnered the full attention of Alon as they chased each other, Renji often just barely escaping. Rukia. Some help here. I'll try, but I'm running low on Ryatsu. Bakudo 9, Geki. To the incredulous astonishment of everyone present, Alon seemed vulnerable to the Bakudo, freezing in place as he glowed a gentle red, the telltale sign of that particular Bakudo. Let's finish this, Zabumaru. Renji's Zanpakudo thrummed in his hand, sharing its master's bloodlust as the Shinigami swung it at the immobile chimera. But suddenly, with no warning at all, Alon broke the binding and rushed at the redhead, easily avoiding Zabumaru's blades. Renji only had time to utter 2 words, OF-. Hado 63, Soren Sukatsui. Rukia's Kido struck Alon right in the head. However, it was only enough to push Alon to the side, just enough for his enormous fist to rip off Renji's left arm instead of punching through his chest. Renji grit his teeth as a wave of pain came over him. I'm gonna have to go see Inoue. But when Alon turned his sights on Rukia, Renji knew he couldn't just leave his childhood best friend behind. No choice, then. He began to glow a fiery red as he gathered his Ryatsu. Let's go, Zabumaru. Bankai. Moments later, the massive bone snake known as Hihio Zabumaru lunged at Alon, successfully snatching him up in its mouth just before he could reach Rukia. Hikatsu Taiho. Renji called out. On cue, the Ryatsu that held the segments of Hihio Zabumaru together expanded exponentially, glowing the same red as a Ciro-like blast began to manifest in the head. What none of them could see was that in the back of Alon's head, hidden by the mane, a single eye opened and charged a Ciro of its own. Hikatsu Taiho met Ciro and battled for supremacy. Ultimately, it was when Renji slammed Alon to the ground face first by having Hihio Zabumaru aim straight down that the Ciro's power faded and Renji's technique blasted straight through the chimera. The blast continued and destroyed several buildings, and there was no doubt that Alon had been completely disintegrated. They defeated Alon. Milorose breathed in horror. Yeah, and you're dead. Suddenly, all 3 fraction were hit in the head with a spiritual arrow. Moments later, they began to dissipate into spirit particles as well, having been killed instantly. Both Renji and Rukia looked up to see the grim face of Ishida Yuryu. You two should go get healed up. Renji needs his arm back and you're both running low on Ryatsu. Where the hell were you? Renji demanded, angry that the Quincy had just appeared and killed the 3 Arrancar only after Alon, the primary threat, had been destroyed. Not that it should matter to you, but I was over there keeping the towers safe from various Jillian who had sensed the battles and were coming through, Ishida snapped. Renji, Ishida. Rukia yelled, getting both their attention. Now is not the time for your pointless, TSTRN-induced squabbles. There is a war going on. Renji, except that Ishida was helping out in one of our primary objectives. Ishida, Renji just lost his FNG arm. He's got the right to be angry when to all appearances you hadn't done anything. Now Renji, you and I are going to get healed. Ishida, continue to protect the towers. If you two are going to continue like this I will kick both your buttes. Are we all clear? Yes ma'am, both answered dully as Renji dismissed his Bankai. Good. Now let's go, Renji. Haribel clenched her fists as she felt her subordinate's Ryatsu be extinguished. Skilled warriors on the towers, she whispered hoarsely, remembering what Yamamoto had said as she watched the massive bone snake vanish. She turned to go after the ones who had killed her precious fraction, and vanished with a burst of sonido. She arrived where the fight had taken place, only to find no one nearby. There was a single human in white clothing atop one of the towers, who was systematically destroying Jillian as they appeared using a spiritual bow. The Espada shook her head. That can't be him. He looks too busy, and he's obviously not a Shinigami whose ability involves a giant snake. The thought struck her to destroy the tower herself, and Harabel paused for a few moments to consider. She decided against it, however, as she wanted to take personal vengeance on whoever had caused the death of her subordinates, and if she did not pursue immediately, she would not be the one to exact revenge. Harabel's head whipped to the side as she felt Baragan's fraction die, and she sensed that several Shinigami had worked together to defeat them quickly and easily. Noting that they once again returned to the towers to protect them, she shook her head to remind herself of her mission, and began looking for traces of her fraction's killers. She spotted 2 Shinigami making their way to a building on the ground, and her blood boiled as she realized that they must be the ones who had killed Apache, Sunday through Sunday, and Milarose. They're heading to a healing station. She dashed after them, memorizing their appearances so even if they escape momentarily, she would know them by sight. The smaller of the 2 jerked suddenly before turning to look straight at her. Following suit, the red-headed one looked the same way, and a grim realization crossed their faces. Harabel smiled behind her mask and high-collared jacket. "That's right, see your end as I come to take your lives." She drew her sword from behind her back. It was much wider, and shorter than most swords, but the truly unique aspect is that it was completely hollow inside. It consisted of nothing more than the edges and hilt. Her sword in hand, Harabel lunged at the 2. Only to be blocked by another sword, one very familiar sword. "Grimmjow. What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. "Kurosaki had me beat, was about to kill me, but then offered a way out. He agreed to spare my life if I protect that building and whoever is inside. Something tells me he would count anyone trying to get there, and nothing personal, and I can't die just yet," Grimmjow explained. "Traitor. I'll cut you down." She jumped back and channeled her Ryatsu into her sword, making the hollow inside become filled with her yellow Ryatsu. Ola Azul. She brought her sword down in Grimmjow's direction, and the blade-shaped Ryatsu launched itself at the Sexta Espada. Grimmjow grimaced as he realized that if he dodged, the building he was sworn to protect would be damaged, and he couldn't afford that if he wanted to survive past today. He fired a bala at the attack, which successfully decreased its power and deflected it away. While he felt he was on par with the Quarta Espada, Ulquiorra, he knew that until he proved that, Harabel as Espada Trace would remain out of his league. If I can't win against Ulquiorra, I know I can't win against Harabel. But I must survive so I can grow stronger. There was only one option, so Grimmjow reluctantly swallowed his pride. "Please, Harabel, can't it wait until the ones you want come back outside? I can guarantee them and they will, because they wouldn't be able to stand not being able to help their friends. They killed my fraction." Grimmjow honestly could not see why Harabel cared for her fraction so much. His own fraction had been cowards, the lot of them, giving up on their dreams of Vastolord. However, it was as good a reason as any for vengeance, he supposed. "So you want revenge? Fine, then. But wouldn't your vengeance be so much sweeter if you crushed them while they were at full power? To make them see that it didn't matter what they did, they had lost the moment they faced off against you." Harabel stopped in the middle of casting another Ola Azul, hit by the possibility Grimmjow's words offered. They made a kind of poetic sense. "They destroyed my fractions at full power, the least I could do is do the same to them." She sheathed her sword. "Very well, Grimmjow Jägerjacques. Tell them when they come out that I await them where they killed Apache, Sunday through Sunday and Milarose. I don't think you'll get that chance." Harabel spun on her heel to see someone she had not seen in a long time. There was a woman, garbed in a torn 2-piece olive-green outfit. She had long, blue-green hair and her mask fragment was the front part of a skull with a pair of curved horns similar to a goat's. There was a crimson line reaching across her face directly underneath her eyes, across the bridge of her nose. "Neliel Tuo Delschwank." Harabel breathed. "But, how? I was told you were lost." "I was," Neliel agreed. "I was betrayed, Tia-chan. Neutra and Sale attacked me from behind, and damaged my mask. I lost most of my Ryatsu, and reverted into a child form with amnesia. My faithful Frachin, Dondochaka and Pesh, took care of me. She shook her head. Just earlier today, we came across an Arankar named Cazador de la Luna. Later, we found out that he was the inner hollow of Kurosaki Ichigo, who was very kind, and refused to strike me or my friends down. I came to see him during his battle with Grimjow, but in my child form I was unprepared for the intensity of such a fight, especially when Kurosaki Ichigo had pulled on his hollow mask. The enormous surge of Ryatsu, right next to me, forced open my memory block, and I collapsed from mental strain. I woke up in that building you are trying to attack, thanks to a wonderfully kind human with a gift for healing. Somehow, she had repaired my mask, and with that I regained my old form, with all my old power. I am glad you are recovered, Neliel, and I understand that you owe your recovery to these people. But they killed my Frachin. Tell me you wouldn't do the same if yours were killed. Harabel shouted. I cannot, the former Espada Trace admitted. But you must put the blame where it truly lies, Tia-chan. Who is responsible for their death? Would the ones you seek have killed them if your Frachin hadn't attacked them first? I don't know. Does it matter? Very much, Neliel insisted. You must understand, Tia-chan, that the Shinigami and humans here are merely defending this town, and their own lives. But Aizen-sama needs this town to create the Uken. And why does he need it? To ascend to the royal realm, and become a god. And there was no other way? Neliel questioned. Of course there was. Aizen looked for the original Uken for a long time in Soul Society. The best he could find were the instructions on how to make a new one, and that only the Suteicho knows where it is. All he would have had to do is become Suteicho, and then he could have ascended without causing all this needless violence and death. She shook her head sadly. You know I abhor fighting, even when I know it is necessary. I cannot help but hate Aizen for causing so much pain and death and forcing us to fight. He betrayed Soul Society, his own comrades. He forced several of us to submit through sheer might. He refused to punish the ones who betrayed me, and even promoted them. Is it any wonder that the Shinigami refused to simply lie down and die? No, Tia-chan, the Shinigami are not responsible for your Frachin's death. Aizen is. The two Espada Trace looked at each other in silence, Neliel waiting for Harabel to say something, the latter struggling to digest her predecessor's words that held the ring of truth. Why then? Harabel finally asked. Why did you serve Aizen-sama if you knew this? What choice did I have? I desired to live, and Aizen did use the Hugyuku on me, for which I will forever be grateful. And I admit, for a time Aizen did have my loyalty. But I have seen him for what he is now. Aizen is a monster beyond that of any hollow. Nell. Is that you? Both Espada Trace turned to the side, where they saw Kurosaki Ichigo, currently in Bankai, looking at the blue-green-haired former Espada incredulously. Ichigo. Nell promptly tackle-glomped him, sending Ichigo tumbling to the ground. I'm so glad to see you're okay. I was worried when I woke up that I wouldn't have a chance of help you. Ichigo blinked and tried to keep from turning too red. Nell was most definitely a full-grown woman, and if he so chose he could have an excellent view of her BRSTS. Plus there was the fact that Nell was now straddling him. Now's not the time. Nell. I'm glad to see you too, but could you let me up please? Oh, right. Nell giggled a little, standing up before giving Ichigo a hand up as well. Ichigo, this is Tia Harabel, Espada Trace. Tia, this is Kurosaki Ichigo. The two glared at each other in suspicion before the Vizard tentatively offered a hand to shake. The Espada looked at it for a moment before reluctantly doing the same. They shook hands quickly then let go. Ichigo quickly turned his attention back to his friend. Nell, how did you grow up so fast? Last I saw you were still a kid. That friend of yours, Inoue, has a real talent for healing. Nell explained happily. She fixed my mask, and Viola, I'm back to my old self again. Well, I'm glad you're better. Harabel was surprised to see honesty in Kurosaki's eyes. What do you plan to do now? I won't lie, we could use your help, but I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to go near Aizen or his forces ever again. Well, I could go after Neutra. Nell mused. I do owe him a good beating. He's dead, a Shinigami Taicho killed him, Ichigo interjected. DMN. What about Sale? At the wizard's confused look, she elaborated. Tall, pink hair, glasses, pretty creepy. Has a tendency to stalk other people, supposedly so he can study their powers and find ways to nullify them? Ichigo burst out laughing for a moment. You mean to tell me there's a tall, creepy guy with pink hair and glasses in your ranks? He must be the laughingstock of the Espada. You've got no room to talk, Harabel put her 2 cents in. Orange hair. Really? That shut him up for a moment. Anyway, he's not here. If he's an Espada and still alive, he's probably back in Hueco Mundo getting slaughtered by the team of Taicho the Shinigami sent there. Shame. I would have liked to introduce him to my Resurrección, Nell commented. Oh well. Who all is left around here? Well, from what I could see on the way here, the Septima Espada is dead, Grimjow's guarding this place, Neutra's dead, Okuyura's retreated and left Aizen's ranks, most of the fraction are dead. Only ones left so far as I know are the guy on the throne, the bored-looking tall guy and his fraction, and Harabel here, Ichigo summarized. Oh, and Aizen, Ikamaru and Tosen who are still trapped by Yamamoto-ji's flames. Harabel looked at him oddly. You made Okuyura retreat? How did you manage that? Ichigo glanced at her, his eyes slightly frigid. I don't want to talk about it. What was left unsaid was I don't want you to know, just in case I have to fight you later. Wait a minute, have you killed even a single Espada yet? Harabel demanded incredulously. Ichigo thought about it for a minute, rubbing his chin with his hand. Let's see. Yami? Nope, he escaped. Rukia killed that Aranjero guy. Ishida's the one who killed Zamari. Grimjow's alive, so is Okuyura. Nope, haven't killed even one of you yet. And that doesn't bother you? Harabel questioned. Not really. Don't really have anything against Okuyura. Sure, I think he's a little creepy, but hey, who am I to judge? Grimjow sees me off. Yeah, you PSS me off too, a-hole, came Grimjow's yell from a distance away. But if I don't need to kill him I won't. Yami I would have killed if I had a chance, but that's only because Okuyura said he'd defect to our side if we did, as it would show that we had enough power to possibly defeat Aizen. Would have killed Aranjero and Zamari too for a number of reasons, but Rukia and Ishida wanted to face them alone. Ichigo shrugged. Doesn't matter though. We just need to defeat Aizen, to protect my town and those who live in it. His eyes softened a little as he gazed at the rest of the foe town, taking in the sheer destruction before hardening again. As for whoever works for him, I don't give a DMN. If you all just went back to Hueco Mundo, I wouldn't follow you. Just leave my town and my friends alone. Harabel was forcibly reminded of Nellio's words from earlier. You must understand, Tia-chan, that the Shinigami and humans here are merely defending this town, and their own lives. She turned her back on the two of them. Fine. I'll help you finish Aizen, and then go back to Hueco Mundo. Yay! Nell cried out happily. You can trust her, Ichigo. She always keeps her word. And I'll help too. Ichigo looked surprised, but then gave Harabel a look of appreciation. Thank you. Let me just warn the others not to attack you too. With that, he shunpaed away, back to Yamamoto. Wow, I totally did not expect that much help. Now we have 2 high-level Espada on our side. That is indeed fortunate. Ichigo almost did a double take. Zangetsu. Wait, I thought Cazador was back in control. Not that I'm against hearing from you, He shut up before he could dig a deeper hole for himself. The wizard got the oddest impression of his inner hollow shrugging at him instead of taunting him for his conversational stumble, which immediately made Ichigo feel uneasy. I'm not completely back up to full strength, so technically Zangetsu's still in control. For some reason though he feels that we're both going to be needed at some point today. That put Ichigo on edge. Zangetsu had never once been proven wrong in his memory, and had been a source of wisdom and strength for as long as he'd known him. Zangetsu, can you give any details? Merely that in light of your opponent's superior years of experience, you will likely need every advantage you can gain. Therefore I would rather not waste either Cazador's or my own strength in a struggle for dominance. Good idea. The Shinigami schooled his face into one of his classic scowls. More than ever, he was glad he'd made the deal with his inner hollow. So far, it had only helped him. He would ask Cazador to teach him a new hollow power to give him an edge in the coming fights, but Ichigo had been aware of most of Cazador's time in control. The hollow side of the wizard hadn't used any hollow-specific powers aside from Sonido, Ciro and Garganta, all of which were instinctually based. Most likely, Cazador would have nothing new to teach him, and the Ciro wasn't as versatile as the Getsuga Tensho. Almost before he knew it, he had arrived where the Shinigami and hollow sides were beginning to square off. Yamamoto had not taken an opponent, but Ichigo understood why. He's saving his power for Aizen. Ichigo rapidly observed who was pairing off. It would seem that Baragan had risen from his throne and had chosen Hitsugaya Taicho for his opponent, while Stark appeared to be eyeing Kaiaraka Taicho. Stark's Frachen, Lilinet, was glaring distrustfully at Yukatake Taicho. It suddenly hit Ichigo that those three were all that were left of Aizen's supposedly loyal Espada that were here in the fake Karakura. It gave him hope to realize that they now far outnumbered Aizen's forces. However, he had the grim feeling that Stark and Baragan were the most powerful, and most dangerous of the Arrancar they had faced thus far. The substitute Shinigami shook his head to clear his thoughts before approaching Yamamoto. Oi, Yamamoto-ji. 2 more Arrancar have joined our forces. One's Nell, she's the one wearing a green tank top and skirt, and the other one's Harabelle, the one with the coat that covers all the way up past her mouth. How can you be sure they can be trusted? Yamamoto queried, almost tiredly. How is it that this boy can gather loyal followers so easily, without even trying? Well, turns out that Nell was betrayed by Aizen a while back, and only just regained her full abilities. I was kind to her back in Hueco Mundo when I regained control over my hollow, so she got a good impression of me, so she came to help me out, Ichigo explained. As for Harabelle, Nell talked to her for a bit and convinced her that Aizen was evil. She's more against Aizen than with us, if you know what I mean. Yamamoto was quite familiar with the concept. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, he murmured. Very well. Once Aizen is defeated, ensure she returns to Hueco Mundo, and we will not hunt her. Kill her if she doesn't comply. Ichigo's eyes darkened, but said nothing. I'm not under your command, Yamamoto. At best, you are an ally. However, he knew better than to make an enemy when he didn't need to. Fine. I'll go see if the 2 are willing to fight the remaining 2 Espada so we can get to the traders. Without waiting to be dismissed, he vanished with Shuunpa, rejoining Nell and Harabelle who had been following from a distance. Yamamoto breathed out in a long sigh. He could tell that Kurosaki Ichigo was rebellious and held distaste for his orders, but at least he accepted them. What am I going to do about him? He's too strong to force to submit, especially when we need him to help defeat Aizen. And there is no guarantee that even with Shihoin Yoruchi's guidance that he'll want to join the Godai. He shook his head imperceptibly. That is a problem for another time. I must focus on Aizen. With that decision made, he returned to carefully observing everything around him, wary that Aizen would break free of his fiery prison or utilize his illusion abilities without the Suteicho knowing it. Meanwhile, within the prison made up of Ryujin Jaka's flames, Aizen Susuke, Tosen Kaname and Ikimara Jin waited. Being unable to observe anything outside the flames with their 5 normal senses, they were forced to rely on their Ryatsu senses. Since Tosin was by far the most skilled at it, he relied on it to cover for his blindness. He had been giving occasional reports of what he could detect. The prison itself made it somewhat difficult, however, as it consisted entirely of Ryatsu, and thus clouded Tosin's perception. Nevertheless, the blind Shinigami had adjusted and was reporting to his commander. Baragan and Stark are preparing to fight. Harabel appears to be with a familiar Arankar of Espada-level strength. I believe it is Neliel Tuo Delshwank, but I cannot be sure. Kurosaki is now with both Neliel and Harabel, with no rise of Ryatsu to suggest that they are fighting. Grimjow is also nearby. I see, Aizen commented, a small smile on his face. Disappointing, but not a terrible loss. Neither Harabel nor Grimjow are of sufficient strength to pose a threat to us. Their sole purpose is to weaken the Shinigami. What of Yamamoto? He has yet to move from his previous position. It appears he is focusing on containing us. Predictable, but I must admit it is still an effective method of keeping me from unduly influencing the battles with my illusions, Aizen admitted. I will be calling for Wonderweiss soon. Possibly after Stark or Baragan dies. I wonder how many Baragan will kill before he is taken down. Jin thought aloud. His ability is truly fearsome. Aizen's smile grew. I predict, none. What? You don't have faith in his abilities? Tosin queried, confused. I do. I merely know that the Gotii 13 have more than one person with a possible counter. It is all a matter of when they will realize it. Chapter 18, Reinforcements. Hitsugaya Toshiro and Baragan faced each other in silence, neither preferring to talk at the moment. They had clashed in silence a few times, with no wounds to either. Each was testing the other's abilities, but it was time to take things up a level. Sit upon the frozen heavens, Hyorinmaru. Hitsugaya Toshiro called out as he slashed downwards in his opponent's direction. His sword reshaped into its shurikai, extending slightly in length and gaining a chain on the hilt not unlike Tensa Zangetsu's, but smaller. On the end of the chain was a small crescent several inches long. As the Taicho slashed at his foe, a stream of ice shaped as a Chinese dragon lunged out at high speed, attempting to hit Baragan. Just as it was about to strike, the dragon slowed for no apparent reason, giving the Espada a chance to move out of the way. It's useless, he told the Shinigami Taicho. You will never hit me with an attack of that speed. Hitsugaya narrowed his eyes. He's slowing down the attacks before he can be hit, I know he is. But how? And how do I get around it? An idea struck him. Perhaps if he doesn't see it coming. Easier said than done. Baragan appeared to be the strongest of the Espada, if the way he immediately took charge was any indication. Once again, he flung a dragon-headed serpent of ice and water at the Espada, who once again dodged easily, only to be forced to parry a physical blow from the diminutive Taicho. Baragan swiftly and easily retaliated with a bone-cracking punch, making Hitsugaya fly back several meters and attempt to recover. What Baragan did not see was that the attack had spiraled and turned around, attempting to strike him in the back. However, that attack too had slowed down moments before striking, allowing Baragan to sonido to the side, having felt the frigid air behind him. A paltry attempt, the stout Arankar declared. Weak. Slow. Pitiful. It's not that my attacks are slow, but that you somehow make them so, he countered coolly. Is it simply a quality of your Ryatsu, that anything that approaches you is slowed? Or is it a special technique of yours? Baragan shook his head slowly. What you do not understand yet is that all the Espada were not simply chosen for their strength, but also for embodying an aspect of death. Rage. Greed. Madness. Intoxication. Destruction. Despair. Nihilism. Sacrifice. Loneliness. And my own, old age. Each of these aspects is a cause of death, and Aizen thought it fitting that the Espada be their avatars. As the avatar of old age, the most powerful and inevitable causes of death, I have control over time itself. Nothing can touch me. Hitsugaya's mind went into overdrive as he attempted to think of a way around Baragon's admittedly impressive and highly lethal ability. In an attempt to stall for time, he commented aloud, "It must be nice to control time. I think if I had that power, I would use it to age myself first. I've been in this childlike body for decades, and it makes me lose the respect I deserve, having earned this position of mine with sweat and blood." The Time Lord laughed lowly, a horrifying sound. "An interesting prospect. Perhaps you would like me to do it for you?" Before the white-haired Shinigami could answer, Baragon had Sonidoed directly in front of him and laid a hand on his left shoulder. Hitsugaya screamed as the bones in his shoulder grew larger, but far more brittle until they shattered from being unable to support their own weight. He vanished in as fast a Shuanpa as he could. Do you see now? Time follows the whims of no one but me. You wish to have an adult body to reflect the power and position you have, but you fail to anticipate that without the necessary nutrients and preparation, your bones would grow steadily weaker as you grow older. Baragon told his enemy calmly. Ola Azul. Baragon was caught by surprise, but even so the attack predictably slowed down before it could hit him, giving the espada a chance to dodge. Harabel. What do you think you are doing? What does it look like? Harabel asked calmly. I'm aiding the Shinigami. Her simple statement caused the stocky, scarred espada's face to contort in fury. You betray me. You were never my ruler, Baragon, the female Arrancar retorted. Aizen was, and I no longer serve him. You are not even the Primera Espada, but the Segunda. That does not matter. I rule everything, for nothing can withstand the test of time, Baragon uttered heavily, drawing his weapon, a massive double-sided battle-axe as large as he was. Where the two blades met was a slit eye. Despite its obvious weight, he wielded it easily with only his right hand. He lunged at the espada trace. Die a traitor's death, Harabel. Harabel blocked with her own sword, reinforcing it with her own Ryatsu, making the hollow inside once more become filled with the light of her power, similar to when she was using Ola Azul. Even so, her Zanpakuto buckled against Baragon's sheer might. Thankfully for her, Hitsugaya was not content to simply sit and watch. He had dashed at Baragon's exposed back, sword at the ready as he conjured another ice dragon using the water from the atmosphere. He fired it from point-blank range, only for Baragon's time dilation to slow it just enough for him to disengage from Harabel and Sonido away. Luckily, Harabel also managed to evade. Standing side by side with the Shinigami Taicho, the espada trace glanced downward. You manipulate ice? Yeah. What can you do? Hitsugaya shoved his questions about why the Arrancar was helping him into the back of his mind to ask later. He wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. I manipulate water in my resurrection. I think I have an idea. Before Hitsugaya could explain his idea, Baragon approached again. I see I need to teach you both about time. Namely, that it is inevitable to die at the hands of it. He held his Zanpakuto with both hands, holding it downward. Rot, arrogant. The eye in Baragon's battle-axe opened widely and then erupted in dark flames that rushed over to the espada. Hitsugaya watched with wide eyes as the black and translucent fire burned away Baragon's flesh, but the high-level Arrancar made no sound of pain, not even when his eyes melted. In mere moments, he had become nothing more than a skeleton. The hollow mask had reshaped itself into full, highly decorated, extremely bejeweled crown. Then Baragon's clothing, which had still been burning in the fires of his Zanpakuto, put itself out and revealed their new form, a black cloak with a fur collar darker than pitch. The slit-eye pendant from his Zanpakuto hovered before him for a moment before it spontaneously grew an elegant chain on either side, becoming a necklace. The scar over Baragon's right eye also had transitioned over, manifesting as a crack over the right eye socket in the skull. You think you are Shinigami? Baragon asked, though for the life of him Hitsugaya couldn't see how he could speak with no vocal cords. No, it is I who am the true kami. All is equal before my judgment. Careful. Harabel warned, motioning to where Barragan stood. The building he stood on was crumbling and rotting away even as he spoke. Do not get close to him, or you will die. Then it's a good thing we're both elemental users, the ice-wielding Shinigami responded. Bankai. Ice erupted from his Zanpakuto, covering him momentarily before unveiling his Bankai form, complete with ice wings and a tail. Destroy, Tiburon. With a flash, Harabel's coat disappeared, revealing her hollow mask remnant that covered everything from her nose to the nipples on her BRSTS, just before a cocoon of water erupted around her. Moments later, she cut her way out of it. Now she wore a miniskirt made of bones, underneath which she had a black undergarment. Harabel also sported knee-high boots and elbow-length gloves, and the impressive mask she'd had earlier had changed dramatically, now forming as a thin, spine-like series of tiny bones going from her waist to the underside of her BRSTS. Her BRSTS were mostly uncovered, but the nipples were hidden by extensions from a collar that had formed around her neck. However, Hitsugaya's attention was not on her body, but her sword, which had reshaped itself into what appeared to be an enormous, elongated shark tooth, with gill markings on each side. The hand guard itself completely covered her hand, making it nigh impossible for Harabel to accidentally lose her weapon. An interesting, and very useful asset, he mused. Let's go. With a single slash, the Shinigami Taicho unleashed 4 ice dragons at Barragan, who realized that he couldn't use his time dilation to make the ice disappear. But he did use it to slow down the dragons long enough to evade. Humph. You presume to use water, knowing that I cannot rot something that is as eternal as I, Barragan observed. Fine then. Let's see if you can evade this. He opened his mouth. Respira. A black haze oozed from his open mouth and spread quickly. Too fast for me to evade, even with Shunpa. Hitsugaya realized, before he quickly used his wings and tail to form a cocoon of ice around himself, generating more to cover any weak spots. There was only one problem. I can't see the outside, how am I supposed to know when it's safe to come out? And what keeps him from attacking me while I'm in here? Luckily for Hitsugaya, he wasn't alone, and Harabel had managed to escape the Respira. La Gata, she cried out, generating water from the gills of her weapon and firing a shark-tooth-shaped blade of water at the higher-level Espada. She fired several of them one after another, forcing Barragan to give up his Respira in favor of dodging. Sensing the dark, deadly Ryatsu of the Respira retreat, Hitsugaya came out of his icy shell and observed with a critical eye, to see when he could strike. Enough of this. Out of his cloak, a far more dangerous and wicked-looking battle-axe than the one Barragan had originally wielded appeared. It was pitch black and had 2 pointed blades on either side of the metallic. Grabbing it with his skeletal hand, he easily cleaved right through Harabel's attacks, rushing towards her and releasing his Respira technique again. Guncho Tsurara. Hitsugaya cried, sweeping his Zanpakuto horizontally and releasing dozens of ice daggers at Barragan, who once more had to evade. This, coincidentally, put the daggers straight on a flight path to Harabel. Herviendo. The ice melted and flowed around her continuously in a circle. As the water-manipulating Arankar raised her sword, the life-giving liquid she had used in her Lagata attacks also returned to her. Cascada. All the water that Harabel had accumulated was sent as an ongoing blast of high-pressurized water at her opponent, whose time dilation was insufficient to keep the water from striking him. Instead, he blocked with his new axe. Her attack continued as she pumped Ryatsu into her Zanpakuto to keep the gill markings generating more water, keeping them in a standstill. Now, Shinigami. Ryusenka. Hitsugaya Shunpaed as fast as he could at the Time Lord, stabbing him in the back with his sword. From the stab wound, ice erupted all around Barragan, quickly encasing him. Thankfully, the cascading water that Harabel was continuing to fire provided plenty of material to freeze the Segunda Espada entirely. As soon as the Espada was completely frozen over, Hitsugaya withdrew his sword and breathed a sigh of relief. However, when he saw the ice become clouded over and misty from the dark breath of Respira, he jumped back and readied his Zanpakuto once again. The ice rapidly melted off the espada as he continued to laugh. You think to freeze me eternally? Perhaps that would have worked if we fought in a colder climate, but your ice was exposed to warm air. All it took was me aging the effects to break free. Then perhaps I should introduce you to the frost of a glacier, Hitsugaya responded coldly. Haribel, I appreciate your help to this point, but I highly suggest you maintain your distance. I didn't want to do this in Bankai, as I'm not sure I can control it fully yet. He raised his Zanpakuto the sky. Can't control what, you insolent fool? Baragan asked derisively. My Zanpakuto's greatest and most basic power. Tenso Jurin. All the water under the heavens is at my command. Haribel looked up, seeing heavy, black clouds gathering overhead. Such power. How can one so young wield this? Suddenly the clouds opened up, and it began to snow heavily. Snow? The skeletal Arankar asked disbelievingly. This is your greatest power. He didn't bother to utilize his time dilation, but this soon cost him. However, when just one of the snowflakes touched his hand, he saw a very large ice flower blossom. With a rush of realization, he activated his time dilation and attempted to dodge the snow. Hitsugaya looked on coldly. None of the snowflakes touched him as he watched his opponent fruitlessly attempt to evade and only gain more ice flowers for his effort. You should know, Espada, it is impossible to dance between every snowflake of my Hayatan Hayakaso, just as it is impossible to evade all the droplets of rain in a storm. Luckily for Haribel, her continued use of Herviendo allowed her to melt the snowflakes before they could touch her, and with some focus she could redirect the water away from herself. She watched in astonishment as Baragan screamed his fury as he was covered in a pillar of ice that just continued to grow as it snowed. The sudden drop in temperature that came with it also prevented him from using his Respira to break free as he had before. When the last of the petals fall, your life will be over, Hitsugaya told Baragan quietly, turning away. Just like that, he defeated one of the most feared hollows ever known. Haribel asked herself. Baragan had been known as the king of Hueco Mundo, commanding armies and conquering everything, before Aizen had appeared with his 2 Shinigami lackeys and turned him into an Arankar. And now, suddenly a Shinigami Taicho with the appearance of a child had taken him down. Not without injuries or assistance, of course, Haribel noted, viewing Hitsugaya's left shoulder and arm. And admittedly, the two of us were wielding water, one of the few things that Baragan could not rot away with his time powers. So perhaps it was simply a poor matchup for him. Even so, Haribel had to admit that the Shinigami was highly skilled. I hope never to fight him after he has fully matured and mastered his powers. Can I ask your name, Shinigami? It's Hitsugaya Toshiro, Taicho of Squad, and yours, Arankar. Tia Haribel, Espada Trace. Or at least, I was before I defected from Aizen. You are quite powerful, Hitsugaya Taicho. I am glad I don't have to fight you. Hitsugaya turned away. I am glad of that as well. Defeating someone with similar powers to my own would cost me too much Ryatsu and leave me unable to help defeat Aizen. He eyed the prison of fire that held the traitors to Soul Society warily. Soon, this nightmare will be over. He murmured under his breath, unaware that Haribel could hear every word. And then Momo can truly begin to heal. Well, that's unfortunate, Kairaku Shunsui murmured, casually blocking Stark's own half-hearted strike against him. What's that? Stark just as easily blocked Shuansui's counterstrike before lowering his sword in a sign of temporary truce. The Shinigami Taicho gestured towards their surroundings. Look around you. Surely you can tell that we're the only ones fighting now. Stark sighed. How troublesome. Are all Bankai as strong as the one that has entrapped Baragan? Shunsui looked over where Stark was indicating. He held no fear that he would be attacked. Neither he nor Stark had been fighting at anything remotely close to their full strength. Stark had sent his fraction, Lilinette, to fight Yukitake Jushiro. Currently, Shuansue's best friend had somehow deprived the Arrancar of her Zanpakuto, a scimitar of some sort, and was very easily keeping her from it while refusing to fight someone who to all appearances seemed a child. Seeing the pillar of ice that reached to the heavens, he smiled. Bankai is a Shinigami's secret weapon, the pinnacle of a Zanpakuto's power. The stronger the Shinigami, the stronger the Bankai. Then is he stronger than you? The blunt question made Shunsui pause. In 100 years, he might be. He smiled again. Toshiro is a very quick learner. Then yours is stronger. I wish to see it. The lazy Arrancar eyed Shunsui seriously. You are not even using the short sword at your hip. I suppose I have to earn seeing your release. I'm afraid so. It's somewhat troublesome for me to simply release, and if you manage to force me, I'll explain why, the Shinigami offered. Stark sighed. Lillinette, come, he ordered. But Stark, my sword, the child Frachin whined. Forget about it, just come back to me. Lillinette gave the completely unharmed Yucatec Taicho a dirty look before reluctantly returning to Stark's side. Yucatec took the opportunity to Shuanpa to Shuansue's side, only to be caught off guard as his best friend tossed him the pink haori he typically wore. Wadash. I think he's finally ready to fight for real, Shunsui answered with a small smile. Stark looked at the pair of Shinigami seriously. We are different from all the other Espada, he declared softly. When they evolved from Hollow to Arrancar, they chose to seal their powers into their Zanpakuto, their weapons. However, my power is split between myself and Lillinette. Long ago, we were one. And now, to release